Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. This is the best attended center conversation we've had all year. Give yourself a round of applause. Yay. It's wonderful to see you all out here on our snowy winter day here. I have a few words that I'd like to share with you before I introduce the person who will introduce the person that you've all been talking to already. Looking back at 2017, it has truly been a remarkable year here at the Research Center. We had an amazing Cameron R. Argetsinger Award dinner honoring Mario Andretti. Fantastic evening. We've had wonderful changes in our lobby displays throughout the season. We had a great and successful car raffle. Our archival staff has made incredible strides in organizing the Sports Car Club of America collection. Oh, that's a little better, isn't it? Maybe if I hold it up a little. As well as beginning to survey our extensive collection. We've also had an opportunity to welcome new staff members, some of whom are here today. Rick Huey, Joe Calley, Duke Argetsinger, and Fred Wickham have all joined our staff this past year, helping us out. Looking ahead into 2018, particularly starting with Center Conversations, it is our tradition to kick off our Center Conversations in January with our locals. So we are going to kick off with 15 in the Watkins Glen Drivers Walk of Fame, presented by our own Bill Green, Rick Huey, and Jim Scaptora. That's going to be on January 20th. We'll celebrate the 70th anniversary of Watkins Glen Road Racing in 2018, 70 years. We'll have our 4th annual Michael Argetsinger Symposium on Automotive History. That'll be in November. We've moved the annual Model Car Show to the opening weekend in April. It's generally been in March, but we've moved it back a month. And we're finalizing details for many of our other center conversations. Well, it's been a wonderful year and we've made great strides. We've also bid goodbye to some wonderful, wonderful supporters of the center. Gene Argetsinger, Sid Silverman, and most recently, Tom Smalley. People who will never be replaced. Many thanks to those of you who have stepped forward with membership support this year. We're deeply grateful for that. And I would be remiss if I didn't call to your attention our gift table in the lobby for those last-minute Christmas gifts and stocking stuffers. Don't hold back. In closing, I'd like to add my personal thanks to an incredible support staff here at the Research Center. It's been a joy, my getting to know these people and working here at the Research Center. And so I want to particularly thank Glenda Gephardt, Jenny Ambrose, Bill Green, Samantha Baker, Kip Zeiter, Duke Argetsinger, Josh Ashby, of course, Rick Huey, and Joe Calley. It's been a wonderful staff. We've grown to a staff of 10 people, and they do just amazing work. So with that, it is now my pleasure to introduce our Director of Outreach and Visitor Services, the one, the only, Kip Zeiter.
We are unabashed shillers of merchandise and memberships and sponsorships, and anything actually you want to give us money for is fine. We'll make up a category. Listen, I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to second what Tom said on a cold, snowy day. I'm really enthused at seeing all of you folks. I'm also really enthused at seeing a lot of new people that I don't think we've seen at the center before. And I really attribute that to the appearance of our guest speaker. Before I introduce Steve, I also want to thank Lou and Chad Parks for bringing the 3/4 midget, the TQ midget, which is on the floor, which lets me then shill for our motor coach trip to Albany on February 10th, Saturday. We have Horseheads and Binghamton pickups. So you're going to have an evening of indoor racing. So if you can't afford to go to Daytona in February, this is much cheaper. We'll take you to Albany that night. Okay? I'm always a big sucker for the story where the small town guy makes it in the big time. And our featured speaker today is that, quintessentially. I'm also a big fan if the small-town guy happens to be from this area. And by this area, I mean southern New York, northern Pennsylvania. Mr. Post is a guy who, as a kid, grew up on the dusty bull rings of 5 Mile Point Speedway and Penn Speedway. And once the small-town guy who made good is a fellow that I know, that's pretty much the trifecta for me. I've known Steve now for probably close to 25 years, I think. He went on a couple of our race tours way back in the early 90s. He was a tremendous guy then. He is a tremendous guy now. And it's taken us 3 years to get him here, in part because he just has such a crazy, crazy schedule. But we did some speaking in front of Watkins Glen High School classes yesterday and Horseheads classes in the afternoon, and he was just tremendous. And what I'm most happy, and what I think you guys are going to be really interested in hearing about, you're going to hear about NASCAR and drivers and all of that cool stuff. But this is really Steve's personal journey. This is really the story of a guy from Halstead, Pennsylvania, who made it to the big time. There's 8 people that announced for Motor Racing Network, and Steve is one of them. So, small town guy who made it on the big stage, local guy who made it on the big stage, and a guy I know personally. That's it for me. So, I'm going to introduce Mr. Steve Post. You are in for about, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 4. We may go on the whole day. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming. Steve?
All right. Thanks, Kip. Great to, thank you. I think that goes to Ron, I think. I'm, as Kip has talked about, it has taken about 3 years to put this together, and I'm really shocked that Kip would want to put it together. As he mentioned, we've known each other about 25 years, and Kip did bus tours. And I recall one of the early bus tours we did was a group from the We Go Racing fan club. We went to New Hampshire. Okay, and the shocking part that Kip would have me back is because I was surprised he let me on the bus to return from New Hampshire. Back in the day, I enjoyed frosty cold beverages, and in many cases I enjoyed multiple frosty cold beverages. So we're riding in this bus trip to New Hampshire, and this was when Stroh's Beer introduced the 30-pack. Huh, are you kidding me? 30-pack of beer. So I break out a 30-pack on our bus trip to New Hampshire. We get to New Hampshire, we park across the street, and over into the racetrack is 6 lanes of bumper-to-bumper traffic. So we're playing Frogger, trying to get to the traffic. I have what I'm taking into the racetrack of my Stroh's 30-pack in one of those really handy styrofoam coolers with a nice string handle on it. I get halfway through playing Frogger in the 6 lanes of traffic, the handle breaks, the cooler hits the ground, and beer goes everywhere. Well, not wanting to waste the investment in the beer, I do the best thing that I know what to do, and I pull my shirt and I'm rounding up beer cans while all the cars are tooting their horns and people are laughing and catcalling. And I probably got 6 or 8 of my beers, and they're in my shirt there. And I look up, and here's Kip over along the fence line, just keeled over laughing out of just the sheer moment of me trying to round up my beers and laughing out of embarrassment that this is part of his people. These are his group. And here we go, one of the finest examples. So first off, Kip, I'm glad you let me get back on the bus to return from New Hampshire. And I do appreciate being here, hanging out at the museum a little bit, or the library yesterday a little bit, and just seeing what it is. It has been quite the journey to get here. We've had a lot of phone calls, and finally we just locked in on December of 2017. And it is great to be here. So, and I'm glad everyone has joined us here on this snowy, frosty day. So the story kind of starts like this. And it starts with an announcer. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dusty Doyle welcoming you once again to 5 Mile Point Speedway, your home speedway of the Southern Tier. I was a little kid, and my life and my passion began every Saturday night with those words. Dusty Doyle 5 Mile Point Speedway, going to the races with my father. And I loved being at the racetrack. And I loved listening to Dusty Doyle announce races. The Dusty Doyleisms that were out there. When a car came off from turn number 2, he would go up, 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 up the backstretch. And you know that he was making time. He may or may not have been, but Dusty Doyle sold you. That car is going into turn number 3 faster than any car in the history of 5 Mile Point has ever gone into turn number 3. One of my favorites is a mysterious character named Andy. We're under caution. We're coming through turns 3 and 4, ready to go green. And the phrase was, Andy, let him go. We all wondered who Andy was. The flagger was not Andy. The flagger was Joe Winterstein. Who's Andy? But every time we'd go green, Andy, let him go. And there is actually a Facebook name, Andy, let him go, out there now. So in tribute of Dusty Doyle. The Dusty Doyleisms that were so much fun, when the heat race would roll out and there was 13 cars, he would say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and another car, because it's not good luck to say 13 at the racetrack. It was always that. And when we did that moment at the beginning of the night, ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand? Let's remember who we are, what we are, and where we are for one stanza of our national anthem. Dusty Doyleisms, an announcer that had a passion for racing, a guy that I never met, but a guy that had such an impact on me along the way. My roots in racing go back actually before I was born. My father, who was father of ever, you know, I wouldn't put him a year or a decade. My father was a mechanic. There was a racer in New Milford, Pennsylvania named Buzz Gulick. And Buzz's grandson still races along the way. But Buzz Gulick raced locally at Penn Can, and my dad was a mechanic on his car before I was born. But Dad decided at some point that raising a family, and they were doing some horse showing and some other things, that maybe it wasn't compatible with working on a race car, so he decided he was going to take the family and take us to races. And that's what we did. We went to races virtually every night of my childhood along the way. It was an amazing childhood, it really was. And we would go Saturday nights to 5 Mile Point Speedway. Penn Can was our Friday night track, but in that era, in the early 70s, Penn Can was very hit and miss. Some year one club was running it, another year another club was running it. They'd start in May, they'd end in August, they'd start in August, they'd end in September. It was very hit and miss. So a lot of my memories were from 5 Mile Point Speedway down in the Binghamton area, and so many great memories. We think about racing and we talk about racing now, and one of the bygone events that we used to have in racing that I don't see too much of anymore are kiddie rides, okay? I don't know. We don't seem to see that too much anymore. I think they're important because I remember riding in Wally Locke's J10 car at 5 Mile Point Speedway, and that's 45 years ago. I remember climbing in and sitting on the side rails and the rumble of Red Harrington's Modified. It was 45 years ago. I remember kiddie rides. I remember at Penn Can, you'd line up along the fence and a car would pull up and you didn't have a choice who you were getting. I got the chance to ride with Mike Colston in his car. The flagger threw us all in the back of it and we went into mud this deep, up to our knees, riding with Mike Colston. And I remember those moments, those kiddie rides, those moments 45 years later meant so much to me, that developed this passion of racing. Grew up going to 5 Mile Point. We would sit on the backstretch. We would sit over in turn number 3. There was a barrel down at the end of the back straightaway, and we would stand on it. It was a big water barrel, big long water barrel, and we would stand on it. David Brush, one of my friends, he was the shortest guy, so he would stand in front. I'd stand next. My brother John would be there, or whoever else. We would all kind of fall into line. And we would watch bigger-than-life names wheel cars around a racetrack. Guys with a name like Chuck Akulis and Carl Bubby Nagel. How about that name? Man, there is a great, great race car driver. Old Bones, Dave Kneisel. Wow, Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. Kneisel's Speed Sport. Man, there's not a cooler guy on the planet than Dave Kneisel. Frankie Mears used to come up. That was the kid. That was a protege of Dave Kneisel. And Frankie Mears, he could roll a race car around a racetrack. Larry Catlin from down in Waverly. Turquoise number 88 coupe. What a beautiful race car. He won a lot of races in that number 88 coupe car. Toughest guy in the world in the history of all of motorsports to pass. This is no offense to Dave Marcus and no offense to Ryan Newman, but if you pass Gordy Isham at 5 Mile Point Speedway, you really accomplished something. I ran into years ago Andy Belmont, who raced in the ARCA Series, and I ran into Andy down at Daytona talking about the ARCA Series, and I said, hey, I'm from 5 Mile Point Speedway, and he says, I'm telling you what, he says, I lost 15 years of my life trying to pass Gordy Isham. And those were the heroes, those were the racers, those were the big names that we loved, those were the big names that we followed along with. My first recollection of a race, and I appreciate there's a Facebook group, and I went on there a couple of weeks ago and asked, and I think I've got the dates on this right, would have been 1971, would have been the Spring 100 or Miller Dodge 100 at 5 Mile Point, and a guy by the name of Pete Cordes scored the win in that race. Blue number 68, bigger than life, Pete Cordes, Waldron's floor covering on the race car, and Pete Cordes won that race. Being that was maybe my first memory, that became my guy. I was a Pete Cordes man. 8 years old. I was 6 years old when I first saw that race, but I was a Pete Cordes guy. My dad, he liked Bubby Nagel. My brother was a Chuckakoulis guy. David Brush, he liked Dave Kneisel. I was all in for Pete Cordes, and I loved watching Pete Cordes race a car. Pete Cordes, my hero as a childhood, bigger than life, and I just loved watching Pete Cordes score and race cars around 5 Mile Point Speedway. Away from the racetrack, my life was all about racing as well. I would take little matchbox cars and line them up around a carpeting or on the floor, and I would announce races. I could say the same things that Dusty Doyle said. I could say the same things that Cal Arthur over at Penn-Can or Jimmy Bevins at Penn-Can would say. There is no way in the world I could sound like Jack Burgess's voice ringing through the fairgrounds at the State Fair in Syracuse. And that is, I would do anything in the world to hear Jack Burgess's voice ringing through the fairgrounds at Syracuse. Sadly, Jack is no longer with us. And even sadder yet is at that fairgrounds, they tore that thing down. And just unreal. But all of the voices that I would listen to, and I love the way they described races. Joe Murata had some great lines. I love Joe Murata. I could listen to Joe Murata call a race. Roy Sova, a friend of mine up at Oswego Speedway, and I love the way announcers called the race. And it was a passion of mine. And with those little matchbox cars, I would use Dusty Doyle's lines and Joe Murata's and Jack Burgess's lines, and I would love that. Another part of my childhood was on Thursdays, when all the other kids were riding bikes or climbing trees or in the creek playing or doing whatever. I would sit by the mailbox waiting for the Gator Racing News to arrive. Gotta get a Gator. Oh, I lived for Thursdays when that Gator, I would tear into that, and I knew the next hour of my life was reading through, taking me places that I had never dreamed I would go to see. Gotta get a Gator. And I'm telling you, Pete the mailman, that poor guy, when that Gator didn't arrive on Thursday, you want to talk about a kid walking back in the driveway cussing out a mailman. I was that kid cussing out Pete the mailman when that Gator didn't arrive on Thursday. Saturday afternoons, the ritual in the family was me sitting on the front porch where I lived between Halstead and New Milford. You could see both Highway 11 and Highway 81. And there they would go. The Kneisel Speed Sport hauler with Dave Kneisel headed to 5 Mile Point Speedway. Oh, we knew we were in for it then when Dave Kneisel was going to be there. There goes Norm Norton. There goes Doug Holgate going up there. And I would sit there and I would check off who's all going to be at 5 Mile Point that night. Oh my gosh, there goes Dick Longstreet in his late model, that number 97 late model. You know what that meant? When Dick Longstreet was running late models, it was a race for second. That guy had more bounties on him than anybody in the world. And I would sit there on that porch on Saturday afternoons. And then we'd have those rainy Saturday afternoons where I'd sit there and watch the cars go up, and I'd sit there and one would go the other way. And I was in complete denial as a kid. Oh no, the car must have broke down. Oh no, there's no way. And when that second car went by and the third car went by, I lost my mind. I'm telling you, you want to talk about a little kid having a tantrum. I am telling you, I was done because we weren't going to the races because the stupid weather had rained us out on Friday nights or Saturday nights at 5 Mile Point. That was my young childhood. Along the way, we always went to the races, and along with elementary school and middle school and into high school. And I think the first Saturday night, we would miss some along the way because my father, I am telling you, my father, what a wonderful man. The only time we would miss races is when we were in Canada fishing. So we would go to Canada fishing trips, and that would cause us to miss some races. But the only planned miss that I had, that I ever scheduled something else, was my junior prom. Oh, man, I'm going to the junior prom. My brother let me have his car, a really cool car. Wendy Hine was going to be my date along the way. I was going to go to the junior prom. Yeah, I was sad I was going to miss 5 Mile Point, but, you know, it's the junior prom. It was a disaster. I hated the junior prom. I had no fun at all, and I felt sorry for poor Wendy Hine stuck with me at the junior prom. So much so that the night of my senior prom, while everyone else was borrowing brothers' cars and wearing nice clocks, I was in the car headed back to 5 Mile Point Speedway, where I belonged, and I spent my senior prom at 5 Mile Point Speedway. I loved racing as a kid. And I mentioned my father. We would go on road trips. We'd go to Fonda. We went up there one time. We went to Albany, Saratoga. Went to Lebanon Valley. And one of the great trips we would go on every year is Labor Day weekend. We would load up, Bob and Ella Darrow, Mom and Dad, all of us kids, and we'd get a place somewhere up on Lake Ontario. Friday nights, we'd go to Rolling Wheels. Saturday nights, we'd go to the Bud 200 modified race at Oswego. We did a little bit of asphalt racing. We'd go to Shangri-La a little bit, and boy, but the Bud 200, we were regulars there. We loved going to Oswego for the Bud 200. We'd go to Weed Sport on Sunday night, and on Monday, coming back, we would go to the New York State Fairgrounds. While kids were running to the cotton candy stands, while kids were running to do rides, while other kids were running to do this or listen to that or see that, this guy was a beeline to the ticket window because we were going in to watch the Labor Day Classic at the New York State Fairgrounds, and we did that many, many years. What a wonderful, wonderful weekend of racing with the family, and it is something that I cherish forever. One of our other favorite events was the Northeast 150. Up at Weed Sport. We'd go up there, and we had our Pete Cordez's and our Chuck Akulis and our Carl Nagels. The beauty of the Northeast 150 is that we would see Carl Nagel racing against Will Kegel. Oh my gosh, wily Will Kegel, the Tampa Terror. I read about him in Gator Racing News, and here he is in front of me. Dave Lape, he built his own race cars, Lapco chassis. Oh my gosh, Dave Lape, what a legend. Jumpin' Jack Johnson. Kid, AJ Slideways, Magic Shoes, Mike McLaughlin. So I'm sitting there, and it's overload for a kid. You've got Will Kegel and Carl Bubby Nagel and Dave Kneisel and Pete Cordez and Alan Johnson, and just overload for a kid. It was the Northeast 150. Man, what an experience. We did that a number of years, and all of those were great, but our favorite event, and actually I was just talking to Dad about it a couple of weeks ago, was the Eastern States 200 down at Orange County Fairgrounds, Middletown, New York. Man, that was it. That was big time. 1978, we watched a man by the name of Lou the Monk Lazaro win that race. Lou Lazaro, while everyone is rolling in with nice trailers with wheel racks, Lou Lazaro would roll into a track with a flat trailer pulled by a station wagon with tires in back of the station wagon, and a dog is the only person with him. He would roll into the racetrack, and you know what would happen? He'd whoop everyone's butt. Lou the Monk Lazaro. I watched him win the 1978 Eastern States 200. Man, what a memory. 1979. Oh, it was a fluke. No way this could have happened. The Eastern States 200, 1979. The kid got lucky. Oh, he was not Will Kegel. He was not Buzzy Rudiman. He was not Frankie Schneider. He was not Lou Lazaro. Some kid by the name of Brett Hearn won the Eastern States 200. Oh, what a fluke. That is never going to happen again. Well, it happened 10 more times. Brett Hearn, kid, but I watched him win his first Eastern States 200. Maybe my favorite, 1980. Oh, just the name sends chills, just the names. Kenny Brightbill. Oh, I don't know if any of you remember Kenny Brightbill. I'm telling you, still around, still doing stuff, raced up to a few years ago, and every once in a while I think he still climbs aboard a race car. Kenny Brightbill on the side of the car, on the side of the hauler, Brightbill Donkey Farms. We haul ass. Yeah. And I'm telling you what, Kenny Brightbill, and it didn't matter where he went, He hauled ass. That guy could wheel a race car. Later got to meet Kenny Brightbill, and the first thing I noticed about him was when he shook my hand, he shook my forearm. His hand was so big, he would grab you. His fingers were at your elbow and your hand, your palm to palm. Just an amazing guy. Kenny Brightbill. I watched him win the Eastern States 200 in 1980. And I guess the point that I'm getting at is it's no mystery how I ended up where I ended up. Because I had the best childhood that any kid could ever have. Going to the racetrack, watching heroes, going to the pits afterwards and meeting your heroes. My dad was buddies with Eddie Rafferty. Eddie Rafferty showed up at my house one time. Oh my gosh. I mean, this was an amazing childhood that I have. And I'm so blessed with my mom and dad. They are just so amazing, and we did so much together. My mom and dad were school bus contractors. In Pennsylvania, the bus contractor, the school districts would contract with individuals. So it wasn't like New York State where the school district owns all the buses and they just hire people to drive them. In Pennsylvania, they contracted with the people. So mom and dad had the same schedule we did. So our summer times, when we weren't at the races, we were in Canada fishing. And just a blessed childhood, an amazing childhood that I had. And I'm just so thankful to have been raised in turn number 3 at 5 Mile Point Speedway and going to all those races. Graduated from Blue Ridge High School in 1982. And I had this really weird, awkward, backward misconception of what a career needed to be. Somewhere I got twisted up that you never let your passion become your career because you could then learn to hate both of them. And that, I am telling you, is the most faulty premise on the planet, okay? I lived my life for a number of years thinking I don't want racing to be my career because I don't want to hate. And I don't know where that came from because I know it didn't come from my parents. I'm not sure where it came from. But I had this premise. So I go off, I get accepted at Penn State University, and I am going to be an accountant. Yes, I'm going to be an accountant, and I'm going to go to the races on the side. So I roll through my freshman year and my sophomore year, and I'm at Penn State Hazleton. And I go to my junior year at the main campus and the big accounting 401 class. This is the Mac Daddy of all accounting classes. This is the one, man. This is the one. This is going to set me up for life. And I'm sitting there at night in the library or in my room doing the homework. Oh my God, I hate this stuff. Oh my God, let me just get this homework done so I never have to see this stuff again. Have they lost their mind? I'm going to sit here and do this. And all of a sudden it struck me. It's like, wait a minute, dude, this is your major. This is what you proclaimed that you wanted to do. And so I was in the Smeal School of Business at Penn State and had this right-hand turn and made the decision at that point to go into marketing because marketing was more people-oriented and accounting was more numbers-oriented. So I got out of that, but I still lived under this mindset that I didn't want to work in racing. I wanted to work somewhere and just have racing be this passion and be this hobby. Along that time period, it was 1984. July 22nd, 1984, between my sophomore and junior year, made my first trip to Pocono Raceway. The Like Cola 500 for the Winston Cup Series. And you want to talk about heroes bigger than life. Harry Gant beat Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough and Harry Gant. I used to watch those guys in February in the Daytona 500 with Ken Squire calling the races. I'd run home from church and hear those guys. And here they were at Pocono Raceway, right in front of me, racing, and watched Harry Gant win the race down at Pocono, beating Cale Yarborough. Bill Elliott, I think, was third in the race. And all of these bigger-than-life TV guys were right here in front of me, right here close to home. Rolled through the balance of my college career. And when I arrived at my senior year, did all of the traditional interviews for sales jobs, all the marketing interviews you would do, and nothing was really happening. And I kind of poked around and said, well, maybe I'll just dabble in this racing a little bit. And reached out to Pocono Raceway, reached out to 5 Mile Point Speedway. And soon after that, in fact, ironically, I think the phone call or the mail or whatever it was, we didn't have email back then, it all came about on the same day, where Bob Plebin at Pocono Raceway was going to allow me to volunteer to work in the press room staff. Wow, man, I'm telling you what, Cale Yarborough and Harry Gant and Richard Petty, I'm going to be right there, rubbing shoulders with them. My gosh, we're going to be hanging out together. So I got hired being an interesting term when you're really offered to volunteer, at Pocono Raceway. And then Jim Randall was the promoter at 5 Mile Point Speedway at the time. And Jim offered me to do PR and to find sponsorship. And I'm not sure, I think Jim was paying me $35 a week or something like that. For where I was at, it was great. So graduated from Penn State in 1986, and that summer I actually worked at 5 Mile Point Speedway, $35 a week. Worked at Pocono Raceway for free. We're sitting at 5 Mile Point Speedway, and in comes a pace car. The Reverend Brother Pat Evans shows up. Now, there's a character. Some of you, I know Tom, some of you know Pat Evans. Some of you have heard of Pat Evans, and Pat was a racing minister. He showed up, and he recruited me to be a columnist for Speedway Scene newspaper. Oh, my gosh. You want to talk about having it all. I had it all. I was going to Pocono, doing the cup stuff. I was at 5 Mile Point doing the dirt stuff, and now I was a columnist for Speedway Scene. Oh, my gosh. Well, the reality set in. In about September, the $35 a week that 5 Mile Point was paying was only during the race season, and that was going to be thin along the way, and I needed to find a job. Got a job in the marketing and sales field because, again, I'm still subscribing to this racing on the side. Got to have a career that's not racing. And I got a job at Warehouse Carpet Outlets. They're now based in Endwell. I was actually in the Ithaca store for about 3 or 4 months, and then in 1988 made the move down to the Endwell store. And was continuing to do all my work in 88, I guess it was. Let me see, get the dates here. Actually, in 1987, started working in Endwell with Warehouse Carpet Outlet. 1987, a couple of different things happened to me on the racing front. Made the move from Speedway Scene to Gator Racing News as a columnist. Just became dear friends with Norm and Donna and Joe and Susie Patrick, and just wonderful people with Gator Racing News, and another one of those entities we have that is no longer around. But became a columnist there. It was just a sheer numbers thing, and so much easier to get my stuff to Syracuse than it was up to Massachusetts. But something happened in 1987 in local racing in the southern tier in northeastern Pennsylvania that would alter my life and alter the course of racing. It was June 26th of 1987, and a new guy had come into Penn Can Speedway. He was a new old guy, okay? As 1987 started to unfold, different people would say, "Did you hear Ricey's coming back to Penn Can?" I'm like, "Ricey? Who's Ricey? Who's Ricey?" Seward Rice. He was the club president for the Susquehanna County Stock Car Club in the early 1960s. And from all accounts, he was the man. He was beloved. They thought he did a great job. The club had more money than they ever had before, and Seward Rice was the club president. Ricey worked at a foundry in Halstead, Pennsylvania, the Halstead Foundry. And the Halstead Foundry shut down, and he was looking for work. Driving up 171, his old buddy Pappy Bevins owned Susquehanna Penn Can Speedway. Charlie Bray, the previous promoter, had shut it down the year before, and the track was sitting vacant. And on June 26th, Seward Rice took over and started promoting races in 1987 at Penn Can Speedway. And over the course of that time, I got to know Seward over the course of that year, still working at 5 Mile Point. As we got acquainted and got into the off-season, the next year, Ricey wanted to hire me to be the assistant announcer to Cal Arthur. Oh my gosh, assistant announcer to one of my heroes. What an opportunity. And in 1988, I went to work as an assistant announcer for Cal Arthur, and I also went to work doing some PR and some sponsorship stuff for Seward Rice. And I learned so many great lessons watching the way he operated, watching the way Seward Rice operated. He was one of those rare promoters that would walk the pits after the races. Promoters never walk the pits after the races because you don't want to hear all the pissing and moaning and complaining, okay? Promoters don't walk the pits. Seward Rice would walk the pits. And I'll never forget one of my favorite drivers' meetings in the history of drivers' meetings. Early August, it's hot. We've been there every Friday night. Everybody hates everybody. Nobody wants to be there. We all want to be there because we all like racing, but everyone's tired. I'll look at you cross-eyed and you'll take my head off. And Ricey calls the troops in, and he had a big baritone voice. And he said, "Gentlemen," he said, "we're all tired, we're all hot, and we're all really bothered by it. You've been racing here and this guy's ran into you, and my flagger did this to you, and my handicapper, Casey Cole, he put you back here. Casey's right there. He put you here, and you feel like you've been screwed, blued, and tattooed. And I said, what in the world is this? He said, your crew members, they've been working all year. They've been sweating. You've hollered at them. They've hollered back at you. The officials, they've told them to push the car here. We're doing this. You got screwed by this guy. Your officials, your crew members, they feel like they've been screwed, blued, and tattooed. And all of a sudden, this is starting to unfold. He said, my employees, they're sick of arguing with you. They're sick of working in the kitchen up there flipping burgers in 90-degree weather. They're sick of parking cars, and they're sick of dealing with security, and everyone's hot and everyone's miserable. My employees, they feel screwed, blued, and tattooed. And I'll be honest with you, I'm about done with all of it as well, and I'm feeling screwed, blued, and tattooed. And we're all sitting there, and you could, for a driver's meeting in the pit, it's the only time drivers have ever listened in a pit meeting. I'll guarantee you it's the only time they've ever listened. And everyone's standing there. He says, gentlemen, let's make a deal. We've only got 3 more weeks of racing. Let's all just get through it together and get away from each other, and we'll all come back next year. And I never saw a transition more amongst a field of drivers, employees, everyone. Everyone walked away, and we had 3 peaceful, wonderful weeks of racing, ended with a Pen Can Spectacular, and it was just amazing. Ricey, I'm telling you, the guy had a real knack for communicating, and his very first thing was the spectator comes first. I'll never forget the first night back in '87, he took over the track and he called a driver's meeting and he said, look, he said, we're in Susquehanna, Pennsylvania. There's a few people around here. There's a lot more people in Binghamton, which is 30 minutes away, and a whole lot more people in Scranton, which is 40 minutes away. We need to roll early. We need to be done. We're starting at 7:30. We need to be done by 10:15, 10:30. We need to be out of here so everyone can go do what they wanted to do. Along the way, I became the lead announcer at Pen Can, and I knew the starting time was 7:30. We had a gentleman by the name of Millard Hall who sang the national anthem. And quite generally, at 7:28, Millard Hall was singing the national anthem, and we were good. Well, we had one night, I think Mike Colston flipped on the front stretch. I think we had some kind of bounty to issue to Billy Trigo or something. I don't know, something. There was all kinds of stuff going on, and we were late. And I looked at my clock, I looked at my watch, and it was 7:34 when I introduced the singing voice of Pen Can Speedway, Millard Hall. Well, Stewart Rice, white head to toe, handlebar mustache, he would do this, and this. He's over at turn number 2. He just walked out of the pits and I saw him. He does this and he does this. Puts the arm down and he does this again. Like, oh boy, here we go. I'm in trouble here because I'm 4 minutes late. So I walk, first heat race runs, he's down in the infield. He comes across, and it's like, and you just know, you're just sitting there, you're sitting duck. I'm just like, he's headed my way, okay? He's taking his time, and he's meeting people and kissing babies and talking to tow truck drivers and everything, but he's not veering in any other direction. And it took him about 3 heat races to get there. And he walks up in the tower, and I was announced from outside there. And he walks up, and he just kind of taps me on the shoulder, and he said, let's get down to the office and talk. And I don't remember, I don't know if Leon was my other announcer or someone, but someone else took over the microphone. And we went down in the office, and he said to me, Steve, what time do we start here? And I said, we start at 7:30. He said, what time did we start today? And I said, well, Millard was singing at 7:34. He said, all right. He said, so that's 4 minutes. I said, yeah. He flips me a sheet of paper, and he says, count the names on that paper. And as I'm counting, I realize this is the employee list, okay? And everyone's name is there. Probably Grant Buck's name was there, and Casey Cole, and everyone's name was there. He says, how many is on that list? And it was 50 people. He said, hold on one second. And he radios down to Sandy, his daughter, who ran the ticket office, said, Sandy, ballpark, how many people we have here? She said, we have about 1,500 people here. And he said, okay. And he flips me a calculator. He says, now take your 4 minutes. He says, and multiply it by 50 people. He said, okay. He says, and now multiply it by 1,500 people. He said, if every one of my employees cost me 4 minutes, we're out of business. We're done. I don't know what the number was, but it was thousands of minutes. We're done. He said, so my question is the same question I had at the beginning of this conversation. What time do we start? He said, we start at 7:30. And it didn't matter. We could have pestilence. We could have tornadoes. We could have cars on fire the length of the front straightaway. We could have 10,000 people in the stands or 2 in the stands. It didn't matter. At 7:28, Millard Hall was singing that national anthem. It was just going to happen, but those lessons learned about fans first and his passion for it and all the lessons learned, what a great, great era. What a great time in the late 80s. Also did some work then. I got into the radio business, overnights at WHWK, the country station down in Binghamton, and did that along the way as well. And then came 1990. Had an opportunity to pick up a second track, Makatech Speedway in Lakeville, Pennsylvania. The Thrill Track. And Thrill Track had something to do with what happened on the racetrack and had everything to do with what did not happen on the racetrack. I kind of went down for an audition. I'm down here, I'm announcing, and Makatech, you announced at a porch off from the side of it. I love announcing outside. I'm not one of these guys who likes to be behind glass. I like being outside where I can hear things. So I'm on this porch, and I'm reading lucky numbers. For a hat, lucky number 765321. And I hear some people cheer, and I say, someone won something. For a t-shirt, 761. The next thing I know, I hear people cheering and screaming and hollering. I get to like the third number, and the place is just losing its mind. I look up, and at the start-finish line, making his way from turn number 1 to turn number 3 is a man buck naked. We had a streaker at Makatech on my first night announcing there. Crowd is going wild. I said, well, there's no sense in doing lucky numbers. They don't care about lucky numbers now. Place is going wild. Everyone's losing their minds. So we had a streaker on my first night at Makatech. And as I got done, I said, you know, I think I'm going to like this place. This is entertaining. This is really entertaining. So we would do, and I introduced music to the shows, and I would play some songs along the way. One of the songs that I liked to play was David Rose's The Stripper, okay? Da-da-da, da-da, 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 you know, and we all know that's an old song from the early 60s. And so, and I would go, like we'd go to intermission, I'm like, oh, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little break here, and hey, if you feel so inclined, here's a little music, you know, so boom, and I'd hit it. And, you know, some fat guy'd get up and dance, and everyone, you know, it'd be fun, you know. So I'm sitting there one night, and I hear this ruckus as the stripper is going on, and I look down at the start-finish line, and here is this middle-aged woman who is starting to do the dance. And I'm sitting here going, oh, this is fun. We're going to have fun with this, you know. Any of you, when you were first driving, ever played chicken in the car? You know, any of you ever played chicken, okay? It soon became obvious that she was ready for a game of chicken. And I wasn't sure. All of a sudden, articles of clothing started to come off, and I'm like, oh boy, we're entering territory here that I'm not sure we should enter, but I'm game. I'm in. I'm in. And it became obvious to me she was a little bit more in than I was. So I hit the pause button on the stripper song. She stops. The crowd loses their minds. Beer cans are flying at the tower, and all hell is breaking loose at Makatech Speedway because I ruined what was a perfectly good striptease going to happen at the Thrill Track at Makatech Speedway. Makatech Speedway, the other thing, and they explained this to me right off the bat. You were a two-sport announcer when you announced at Makatech. You were a race announcer and a fight announcer, because they love to fight at Makatech Speedway. The flagger was a guy named Ed Ziga. And to my understanding, Ed Ziga liked 3 things: flagging races, drinking beer, and fighting. And I'm not sure what the order was. But I do know what the rules were. When a fight would break out on the grandstand, it didn't matter where we were at in the race, the caution would come out. Because it was time for the announcer to start calling the fight. And you start calling the fight. Now, if Ziggy knew the people involved in the fight, the red flag would come out. He'd come down off from the flag stand and join the fight. He loved to fight. And I called many a fight at Makatech Speedway. So much fun. So we were going to clean the place up. We get this security guard, guy by the name of Clarence, okay? Clarence was very round, big one way as he was the other. He was about 5 by 5, okay? And Clarence, and I think the reason he got the security is he had the shirt, he had a fake badge, and he had some handcuffs. And he worked for free, probably for food in the concession stand. So Clarence is there one night, and Makatech was built on a side hill, okay? And so you stood along in the dirt on the back, okay? So Clarence is standing there watching the races unfold, and this scrawny little guy bounces off from him. And Clarence is like, okay, you know, no big deal. And this scrawny little guy bounces off again, and Clarence says, we're going to have to ask you to stop bouncing off from me. So about the third time the guy bounces off from clearance, it's game on. Now, any other place on the planet, when you have a fat security guy chasing a skinny guy, the first place the skinny guy goes is to the exit. Not Makatech. No, the skinny guy goes right down through the grandstands with Clarence in hot pursuit. Of course, we're during intermission or something, so I'm all of a sudden going down the front stretch, up through the grandstands with Clarence in hot pursuit, back down through the grandstands, back up. With Makatech, the pits were behind the grandstands. So the guy jumps the fence into the pit area, the whole crowd runs back to the watches, and up through the pit area, and the crew guys are all working on the cars like, what the hell's going on? And there goes this guy. And finally, he runs through the pits, and out the exit they go with Clarence in hot pursuit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now that intermission is over, we need to get back to racing. So I'm sitting there announcing a race or doing something here as we got going, and 10 minutes later or so, Clarence walks up into the tower just huffing and puffing like you wouldn't believe. And he says to me, he says, I caught that guy. And I said, really? I said, man, he put you through the paces. He said, yeah, I ain't never ran like that in my life. He said, I caught the guy. He says, and you ain't gonna believe it. I said, I found drugs on him. I said, whoa. I said, man, that's really, really good. You found drugs on the guy? He says, yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm announcing or doing something. And I'm like, well, what are you gonna do about it? Then he said, well, I'm gonna call the state police. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I said, wait a minute, where's he at? What's going on? And he says, he's handcuffed to a tree, Steve. The modified feature is next, and I'm not gonna miss the modified feature. So he's handcuffed to a tree up in the woods. This poor guy goes to the races, has a little weed on him, gets into it with a rotunda, gets caught by the fat security guard, and finds himself handcuffed to the tree while Clarence watches the modified feature. Then he calls the state police. Makatech Speedway, the one and only. I could not do the post-race parties at Makatech Speedway were unreal. I could not do one half of one night at Makatech Speedway now, and we would party until sunrise. We would there. One time at Makatech Speedway, I was in charge of turning the lights off. Well, I'm telling you, at 10 o'clock in the morning, you don't realize the lights are on. And the guy that ran the track went over there Wednesday night to start grading the track, and the place is lit up all week long because I forgot because we left at daytime. Makatech Speedway, just some great, great memories, some great times along the way. Along the way, the career, I'm still selling floor covering. I'd moved to a distributorship, and I moved down to Clark Summit, Pennsylvania. And at Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, I hung at a place called The Only Place. And there I made some really, really good friends. Reed Miller, and Dick and Phyllis Longstreet, and just dear friends to this day. Unfortunately, we've lost Dick in the last year and a half, but just really, really sweet people. And we formed a car show called Speed Sport Showcase down in Scranton. I know many of you that had gone to the car show, and we did that. So we had the car show going on. And I'm really thrilled, by the way, I'm stepping forward to here. There's a new group, Tony Frabel and a group are going to put together Speed Sport Showcase again. So the car show returns to Scranton, and I'm just so happy for them. And I do like it. They didn't owe this to me, but they actually reached out to Phyllis and to myself, and I believe to Reed, and asked for their permission, for our permission to go do it again. And I like that respect that they showed. They didn't have to do it, but I love the fact that there's a car show. So as I'm looking at life here in the early 80s, or the early 90s, Speed Sport Showcase, I have a program book that I do at all the racetracks, at the two racetracks I'm at. I'm announcing. I've got all of this stuff. I'm writing a column for Gator Racing News. Another group that I was very involved with was the WeGo Racing Fan Club. I talked about that a little bit when we were talking about Kip. I was president of the WeGo Racing Fan Club, and we just had so many great memories and so much. And life was just rolling along with selling carpeting and the party and the racing and everything else. It was really, really good. Well, at a WeGo Racing Fan Club event at Shangri-La down in Owego, I met a young lady. And that young lady would ultimately become my ex-wife. But of course, there was a few steps in between there along the way. And this whole philosophy of don't make your work because, you don't let your passion become your work was really starting to fail on me. Because I was spending more time in races and events and social events and WeGo Fan Club and Speed Sport Showcase than I was selling carpeting. And the people that I worked for, it was a distributorship out of York, Pennsylvania. They came and they said, look, we're not telling you to leave, but we're ultimately going to tell you to leave. You need to follow this racing thing, dude. You're spending more time on racing than you're working for us, and we really suggest you do it. Had a lot of things going on, and I had this young lady that I was falling in love with. And so it was like, we better start to think about this. In 1994, started interviewing for some jobs in the NASCAR business. And in end of 1984, I was hired by a company called McLean Marketing. I was going to be the PR rep for Factory Stores of America with Butch Mock Motorsports and Todd Bodine. Well, what do we do? How do we do this transition? So we hurried up. February 4th, 1995, we decided to get married. We're going to throw together a wedding. And some of you were there, as well as 26 inches of snow on wedding day. This was fraught with a challenge as well, because we were doing all of our friends a favor by saying, we're just going to do a money tree. We want to make it easy for you. We just want to do a money tree. Truth of the matter is we needed the money tree to pay for the wedding and to pay for the trip to North Carolina. So we have 26 inches of snow. We go through the ceremony and we're getting word that this one's not coming and that one's not coming and this one's not coming. And it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Beyond all of the feelings we're having of the day is the money tree is going to be dry. We're going to be at the VFW in Halstead, Pennsylvania, and not even be able to pay for the keg of beer that we spent the money on. But the good news is the money tree was good. It was enough money to pay for that. We went and we did a family reception at the VFW in Halstead. Then we went and we did a racing family reception at Tigo's Tavern in Conklin. Another great place, by the way. I'll tell Tigo's story here in just a minute. Let me get through the wedding here. We did the wedding, and then we were staying at the Quality Inn, and of course there's 26 inches of snow. The Quality Inn was right next to a place named Country Bob's. So the third reception was at Country Bob's, and Country Bob's was a place not for the faint of heart. Not a whole lot of proud moments happened at Country Bob's, by the way. But yes, we were there, and my bride at the time actually rode the mechanical bull in her wedding dress on that night in our third reception. Yeah, Casey and Clara, they're remembering that. They're remembering that well. Just an amazing, amazing time. Tigo's Tavern. I got to get off script here a little bit to do a Tigo's Tavern story. Great little bar in Conklin. Tim and Polly Bunsick, they ran it. How ate up we were with racing. Okay, the old phrase, you're not drinking a beer unless you have dirt in your beer, okay? So we get to the off season and we know we're facing a long, cold off season with no dirt in our beer. Polly Bunsick goes over to 5 Mile Point and she gets a shovel full or pail full, 5-gallon pail, and 5 Mile Point and Clay. I don't know that they've ever seen each other, but whatever the dirt was, and I love 5 Mile Point Speedway, but I'm telling you what, the clay content at 5 Mile Point Speedway has never been all that much. She went over and she got a 5-gallon pail of 5 Mile Point dirt. And she brings it over and she puts it in little baggies, okay? And she takes and she puts a pinhole in the little baggies and tacks one up above every seat at the bar. You'd walk in, you'd get your draft beer, you'd tap the baggie, and a little 5 Mile Point dirt would fall down. We had dirt in our beer the entire off season. Now, of course, strangers that would walk in off the street, like, what are these people doing putting dirt in their beer? Lost their minds. But that's just part of life that we had around at that time, and just an amazing, amazing adventure. So fast forward, we'll get back to the wedding, and I got married on Saturday, February 4th. We made our way to North Carolina. We're getting ready to go to Daytona. I'm going to be Todd Bodine's PR guy. Tuesday morning, arrive back in the office, get a call to go in and meet with the boss. I could tell by the look on his face, this was not necessarily one of those real happy meetings that we were going to have. Steve, he says, I think I jumped the gun on hiring you. We no longer have the Factory Stores of America account. What I need you to do is take the press kits that you developed, take your business card out of the front of them, box them up, drive up to Charlotte Motor Speedway, and deliver them to another agency. Because we're so late in the game, they're going to take your press kits and go to Daytona. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for, we just got married. We got no money. We got nothing. Ed McLean, the guy that owned the agency, he was able to take us to Daytona. We did hospitality for Citgo for Speed Week, so we went down to Daytona for Speed Weeks. But it wasn't soon after that we end up broke in Matthews, North Carolina, which is just outside of Charlotte. My soon-to-be ex-wife, or ultimately to be ex-wife, and I, we handled things usually by going to a bar room somewhere along the way. That was generally our way of handling crisis situations. And it was a Tuesday night, and we had a whopping total of $26 to our name. We didn't have enough money to move back home. Let alone, I mean, and I was pretty much committed. I'm going to do this racing thing, even though right now it's looking really bleak. Unemployed, strange city, All of our friends are up in the Binghamton area. We're sitting here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we got $26 to our name. And she's like, what are we going to do? We're crying. We're all upset. We're all everything like that. And I said, well, there's a bar out across the parking lot. They have dollar draft night tonight. We're going to go drink like we own the place. We're going to get up tomorrow morning. We're going to build resumes, and we're going to do like everyone else in America does and find jobs. And that we did. We drank like we owned the place, staggered back across the parking lot, got up the next day, and created resumes. Fortunately, she was a travel agent, and at the time we had travel agents. It's an old career that's no longer around. Skip can attest to. Very few travel agents around, but at the time it was a great career. And the good news is she landed really, really quickly. I think that was Wednesday morning, and she interviewed with a guy that Friday morning, and not only did he hire her to start Monday, but he paid her a little bit in advance because she explained the situation. So we bailed ourselves out of that. I'm left with the dilemma. Do I go back into the floor covering business in North Carolina, knowing that I'm lying to whoever I'm interviewing with? Because if I tell them I'm going to be your best salesman in the world and someone in NASCAR comes, I'm going. And so I made up my mind I was going to work for temporary labor agencies, and that's what I did. And I'm not mechanically inclined at all. It's really bad for a guy that works around racing. I mean, I can barely find the dipstick, okay? I mean, the key in the side of the car, the engine, I'm good at that. That's about it. So I get a job with a temporary agency installing heating and air conditioning units. And I often think about it when I drive by those complexes when it's 100 degrees in August or when it's 20 degrees in July, those poor, poor people, because there ain't no way in the world when I installed those air conditioning units are those things working properly. And there's got to be the worst air conditioning installation job in the world. So we rolled through 1995 with me doing that, Julie being a travel agency, and the fall of that year I was able to get a volunteer job at Charlotte Motor Speedway in the PR, working in the press room. And through that was meeting a lot of people. And that really worked out well. And the good news is I came out of that with an interview, and in 1996 was hired by Cotter Communications, Square D Company, Philmar Racing, with driver Kenny Wallace. Yes, indeed. Well, Kenny Wallace. The Kenny Wallace you see on TV, the Kenny Wallace you see on social media, the Kenny Wallace that you hear laughing in real life is the same Kenny Wallace that I have. Wide-assed open. Kenny Wallace. That's who he is. Al Robinson, of course, we all know, or a lot of us know and love Al Robinson. Al was doing PR at Dover. And Al asked if Kenny and I could fly into Baltimore on a Thursday, do a media tour, and then drive up around and go to Dover. So we do that. And we go to all the TV stations and met with a reporter and did all of that. And when you traveled with Kenny Wallace, you were a fast food person. We didn't eat all that well with Kenny Wallace. We were fast food. Well, this day we were feeling really, really good. We felt like, man, we did a great media event. Everyone's going to be happy. So we stepped up our game. We went to Subway. Wow, Subway restaurant. Somewhere up around the Chesapeake Bay. We stopped at a Subway. We walk in, place is full of people. There is a large African-American woman as the sandwich artist that we have. And we're going down through and we're getting our sandwich. And she says, do you want oil and vinegar on your sandwich? And Kenny said, why would I want oil and vinegar on my sandwich? And she says, that's what Aretha Franklin's doing, and she's losing all that weight. Kenny being Kenny, right in the middle of the Subway, puts his hands down, and he says to this large, rotund African-American woman, you like Aretha Franklin? And she says, honey, I love Aretha Franklin. 15, 20 people in the restaurant, 4 or 5 people in the line. Kenny Wallace, R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. He breaks into a chorus of respect right there. I don't know whether I'm dying of horrified, I'm standing there going, I'm his PR guy. I'm supposed to be preventing incidents like this. She drops her fixins and she's dancing. He's singing. The whole place is wondering what the hell's going on. And we're standing here in a Subway singing Aretha Franklin songs. Something I never saw and didn't really plan in the whole PR training. There's not a manual on Aretha Franklin songs in a Subway. She gets done, and so Kenny gets done singing the song, and she says, so now the question is, do you want oil and vinegar? And he says, I want double oil and vinegar on mine and put it on his too. If it's good enough for Aretha Franklin, it's good enough for us. And out the door we go. Kenny Wallace, what a guy, what an adventure. Your first PR gig, if I would advise anybody on first PR gigs, I would say get a guy like Kenny Wallace, because you know you're never going to have a dull moment, never going to have a dull moment as far as that goes. I learned a very valuable lesson during that time period because while Kenny Wallace was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun doing media, and everyone loved him, we averaged about 22nd place finishes. And so when you're running in that position, you don't get a lot of TV coverage. And so Square D was like, we need to get more coverage. We need to get more coverage. We need more coverage. And I said, I'm trying. I'm talking to the TV people. And I met Benny Parsons. Benny was always around the Concord area. And we'd always see him when we're out to eat and out to dinner. And I met Benny, and I said, Benny, man, I'm getting clubbed by my folks here. He said, Steve, he said, we're not going to talk about a guy running in the mid-pack. He said, we're going to talk about the guys up front. He said, I'll do what I can. He said, we're not going to talk about it. It was April of 1997, second year with Square D, Martinsville Speedway. Kenny Wallace goes up and puts the Square D Ford on the pole position. Like, oh boy, here we go. Game on. We were able to lure ourselves into an in-car camera. And that race for 500 laps at Martinsville, Kenny and Rusty went toe-to-toe for the win. We ended up not winning the race, but we ended up on TV all day long. Every reporter wanted to talk to us afterward. We're standing there, and we're an hour after the race, and there's people still wanting to talk and everything like that. I go out to dinner. We get back home Monday. There's people calling, radio interviews. Everyone wants to talk to Kenny. Everyone wants to talk to Kenny. Happened to go out to dinner that Monday night, ran into Benny Parsons, and Benny said, let me guess, PR Man of the Year after yesterday, aren't you? He says, you're damn right about that, Benny. There's a whole big different world. He says, they ought to be happy with your PR efforts now. I said, yeah, you know, I'm a really good PR guy today. And 5 days ago, I was a useless PR guy. We learned the value of performance and learned those lessons doing stuff with Kenny Wallace. So I worked on that program for 2 years with Square D Company. And then needed to change. The agency business was changing, and was just in a spot where it was time to move on, and which is customary in it. And did an interview and got a job doing PR for the IWX Motor Freight team, which was a truck series team. Randy Tolsma was the driver of that truck, and we just had an absolute ball. Did team PR for them. Also in 1998. I was able to return to my racing roots a little bit, my announcing roots. I got hired to sit in and start announcing the summer shootout at Charlotte Motor Speedway on Tuesday nights. That's the Legends and Bandolero racing that they have at Charlotte. So 1998, I'm doing team PR for IWX, on the road, traveling with the team, having fun, really having a great group of guys. We were all hanging out, having fun. And Tuesday nights during the summer for 10 weeks, able to do the summer shootout. Roll through that a year and a half. I get to August of 1999. Steve Coulter, a man that I have so much respect for. He was the owner of IWX Motor Freight. We get to August. We're in Indianapolis, and it was nothing for Steve to say, let's go have a beer at the bar. And we sat down and had a beer at the bar, and Steve said, I'm a trucking company, and a trucking company really doesn't need a good PR man. Here we go. I know where this conversation is going. This conversation had a little bit of a twist to it, though. Steve said, here's the deal. He said, you're part of the team. You're part of the family here. He said, I want to keep you on board. I'll keep you to the end of the year. So I'm a guy that got a 5-month window to get a job, which why I have so much respect for Steve Coulter. He said, but what I want you to do, he said, I want you to find the right job. He said, don't take the first job. He said, if we get to the end of the year and you don't have anything, we'll talk about next year. We'll figure it out, but find the right job. He says, and I'm with you. He says, use the fax machine, use the printer. You need time off to go interview, whatever you need to do. He said, you're part of the family. You're a great PR guy. I need you with someone who needs a great PR guy, not a trucking company. He said, and that's what I want for you. So roll along. We get into October, November, and I catch wind that Texaco Haviland is going to have a driver change. Ricky Rudd is going to drive for Robert Yates. Knew the people at the agency, Performance PR Plus, a woman by the name of Kimberly Brannigan. Kimberly is the daughter of Dick and Linda O'Brien, formerly with Oswego Speedway. So I know a lot of you would know Dick and or Linda. Kimberly's the daughter. Go down the day before Thanksgiving of that year, day before Thanksgiving of 1999, meet with her, and it became just a formality. She says, I need to run this past the owner of the agency. She said, but I'm going to recommend we hire you. She said, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to IWX to the team. She said, I'll call you by the end of the day. I get done, go up to the race shop. Sure enough, an hour or two later, get the call, and I've been hired by them. She said, here's the problem. He says, this is brand new with Ricky Rudd, brand new, and we're late, we're behind, we don't have a photo shoot, we don't have this, we don't have that, we need to start ASAP. Called up Steve Coulter and I said, look, I got a gig, Texaco Haviland, it's exactly what you said I needed to do, it's what I need to do, it's what I need to go from there. I said, where do we go? And he says, what do you have to do there? And I said, I got to do this, and I got to do that. And he says, you start Monday down there. He said, as long as you get done what you're supposed to get done for me over the month of December to get everything buttoned up, we're good to go. That month of December, double money, double income, because Steve Coulter, the man of his word, kept me through that year. And that month, December 1999, we had, with IWX, we had a bonus program. And the bonus program was a percentage of winnings. And I had this conversation with my wife, and I said, you know, I can't ask for the bonus check. I mean, I guess technically because I was with the team all year, I earned it. I had that month of December of 1999 where I was getting paid by IWX, getting paid by Square, by the Texaco Haviland folks, Performance PR Plus, and the day after Christmas got a check for $2,600, my bonus money for Steve Coulter. And just could not believe that someone could, it's fair and it's right, but in our business that doesn't happen all the time. And what an amazing, and it turns out Steve ends up being part of my story as we go further down the road. 2000 ends up dawning Ricky Rudd. I'm going to be Ricky Rudd's PR guy. Ricky Rudd, classiest guy that I've ever worked for in my life. Straight up shooter. We sat down and met the first time, and he said, what are you responsible for? I said, I'm responsible for media. He says, when media around you be there, he says, you're not my hat carrier, you're not my helmet carrier, you're not in charge of my suit, you're not in charge of anything else. You're hired to do PR with media. You do media. And we got along really, really well. Ricky Rudd, just an absolute pro to deal with. Some amazing PR stuff. We pulled a lot of really good stuff. Ricky cherished the media relationship. He used it to his advantage a lot. He would go do media tours. He was very savvy on it. He had previously owned his own team with the Tide sponsorship, so he certainly knew the value of it and had a great, great run with Ricky Rudd through the year 2000, came close to winning. And in 2001, what was it, June 17th, we roll into Pocono Raceway, where I'd got my first gig, first volunteer job. We roll into Pocono, Friday afternoon, win the pole position, and I'll be darned if Ricky Rudd doesn't go out and win the first race with the Texaco Haviland team, my first race as a PR guy, at Pocono Raceway of all places. When you're the PR guy, when you're going to win a race, and especially when you've been snake bit like we had a lot of things go wrong, you have in the truck, you have a hat bag, and that is your victory lane hat bag. But of course, you don't want to be the guy with 5 laps to go to get the hat bag, because then you jinxed everything. So, but of course, Pocono Raceway, to get from one point to the other is about 18 miles. Okay, you can't get, there's nothing close at Pocono. So I'm sitting there with 5 laps to go. It's like, we're going to win this race. And I got to go all the way back to that truck and then all the way back out to victory lane with that hat bag. So I said, well, okay, I'm not going to get the hat bag. I'm just going to walk back here so that when Ricky brings the car in. So I walked and walked. I didn't want to jinx anything. 4 laps to go, 3 laps to go, 2 laps to go. I'm just about to the truck as the car's coming off from the 3rd turn at Pocono, and the radio just erupts with, we did it, you know, and I did that. And I run into the truck, and Kelly was our truck driver, and Kelly literally throws me the hat bag. And I said, dude, he said, I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to be the one to jinx this. I said, I didn't want to walk back here. I didn't want to be the one to jinx it. He says, let's go. And away we went with a hat bag out to victory lane. Had an amazing celebration, amazing first win for Ricky with Robert Yates and Fatback McSwain, and that whole crew did all of the post-race stuff, did all of that needed to be done. And I'm sitting there, and I got done, and it was quiet, and most of the media had left. It was dark. It was late at night. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a walk out to victory lane just to kind of take this all in, to kind of savor it. I walked out into victory lane, and over in the corner, victory lane at Pocono, still the same victory lane. It's kind of an oval-shaped area. Over in the corner, someone had left a cooler, one of those little igloo coolers. And I'm like, I'm going to open that cooler, and there was 1 can of Yuengling beer in that cooler. There's no one around. I'm like, I'm technically stealing this beer. Said, but I'm assuming somebody left it. And I sat on the steps and just thought about life, thought about starting at Pocono and standing there in victory lane that day with the first win with an ice cold Yuengling beer. Man, I'm telling you what, life didn't get much better than that. get in the car, go back to the hotel, back to the airport, and we're just rolling along. The PR gig with Ricky Rudd, with Texaco Haviland, was an amazing time to be. I learned a lot. I learned a lot of the lessons with Kenny Wallace about being in the front of the field and being in the mid-pack and where you're at in the pecking order. But with Ricky Rudd, we were challenging for championships, winning races, and you just became a really, really busy PR guy. And what an amazing, amazing time it was in life. As we rolled along, that was 2001. We got our first win. We won at Richmond later that year. We won at Sonoma the next year. But Ricky and Robert they were getting ready to have a divorce. Texaco Haviland was going to go to Chip Ganassi Racing with Jamie McMurray, and I started to look at the lineups here, and I said, wait a minute, Ricky's going to the Wood Brothers, and they already have a PR person. And Texaco Haviland is going here, and they already have a PR person, and Robert Yates is going to have one car with Dale Jarrett, UPS, or Ford, whatever it was, might have been UPS. They already have a PR person. And I'm like, I don't know, this is not working out. And I was working well ahead of the curve and got a chance to talk with David Hyatt, who was then the president of Motor Racing Network. And we had talked before, and we talked about me doing an audition. And he grabbed me at Pocono, the July race. We'd won the June race. He grabbed me in the July race at Pocono. He says, you still interested in doing an audition for us? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I may be a little bit more interested now than I was before, and I shared with him. I said, look, my deal's coming to an end, and I don't know what it's going to look like. I feel like I'm going to be all right, but I don't know what it looks like. September 13th, 2002, New Hampshire Motor Speedway, hanging off a billboard in turn number 3 for a modified race. I did my audition. It was an interesting cast of people in that audition, now that I look back at it. We had Joe and Barney Hall in the booth, okay, which they always did the auditions. Down in turn 1 and 2, Kyle Rickey auditioned for me. In the pits, Ryan Horn, Gary Danko, and I was in turn number 3. It probably turned out to be the biggest audition that MRN ever had, because I actually work for Ryan Horn now. He is our production department manager. He oversees the department. Kyle Rickey still works with the network. I still work with the network. Gary Danko had a few races, so we literally on that audition went 4 for 4, and everybody got a gig with MRN along the way. The modified race was kind of funny. A little bit of a side note on the modified race. It was one of those races where I don't know if it rained or was wet or damp or something, but Ryan Horn was our pit road guy doing the audition, and we were just mocking a broadcast. This was going to nowhere other than just our little private channel there. This is going to nowhere. Carl Pasternak is one of the modified racers, and Carl wrecked or something broke, and he was really hacked off at NASCAR. So Ryan, being a good little MRN audition pit reporter, runs down, Carl, what happened? Well, the goddamn NASCAR did this, and damn if NASCAR didn't do this, and they didn't do that. NASCAR officials heard it, and NASCAR officials fined Carl Pasternak $500 for something he said on an MRN audition, because they thought it was an MRN broadcast. And he actually got fined. Later on, they amended it because he got into it with an official. They amended it so that he was altercation with an official. But actually, it was the MRN, our audition. We're the only audition in the history of MRN that resulted in someone getting fined. Just a crazy, one of those great memories along the way. So we roll into 2003. I'm going to get this career of a lifetime. Motor Racing Network, here I come. I get my contract. I rifle it open, and the number on the bottom of it is $12,000. Let's see, wife, 2 kids, $12,000. That's not going to pay the rent, let alone anything else. But it's the dream job. But it's $12,000. How does this work? How does this work? And I had one of those moments where I just all the relationships I had in the past. I reached out to Performance PR Plus, the agency, and they hired me to do hospitality for DuPont that year. So I ended up doing Jeff Gordon hospitality for 10 or 12 or 15 races. Went back to Steve Coulter with IWX, and I said, look, here's my deal. You know this is my dream job. If I could write a trucking newsletter for you, if I can do whatever it is. He said, well, we still have the team. I don't need full-time PR. He put me on a retainer. Did that. I knew the folks at Concord Speedway, hired to do that. Another one, and we was chatting earlier, L.W. Miller, Wayne Miller from down in Dewshore. L.W. was racing in the modifieds down there, and I had done some work up here with L.W., and I reached out, and I said, guys, I just need a favor. I've got a dream job here with MRN, but it only pays $12,000. I need some help to get to the next level. And everybody that I had formerly worked for contributed something that year. And it was an amazing year. Next thing I know, I'm juggling projects, and I'm flying here, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and trying to invoice people, and trying to remember, did I do this, and did I do that? Along the way, also, the summer shootout gig at Charlotte Motor Speedway had moved into the big track. So I was the voice of Charlotte Motor Speedway for a few years. And for the years 2003 and 2004, it was very, very part-time, the MRN stuff was. It was 16 races, I think it was in 2003. And I'll never forget that first race. It was March 14th of 2003, the Craftsman 200, NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series at Darlington Raceway. My first race at MRN was at Darlington. Now, that's pretty stinking cool. I don't care who you are. That was pretty cool. So we're there, and I'm gung-ho. I've done research on every guy that has ever ran in the Truck Series. I mean, I know more than anybody ever needed to know about the Truck Series. I am so gung-ho and so ready to go. And there was a young kid from Missouri by the name of Carl Edwards in that race. And Carl, it was his 9th Truck Series start, and he was driving for Jack Roush. It was his first year of his big opportunity. We were running in March, so it was early season. Might have been the second or third race. And so what we had is Carl's truck was overheating midway through the race. What we had, and the signal with MRN is we would just point, we would see the driver, get the driver's attention as he's sitting in the truck, and he would motion you in or tell you no, and that's fair, and that's the kind of the signal we have. Well, what we had, they pushed the truck off from pit road on the front stretch. What we had was an announcer that was really, really anxious to get that interview. I was going to get Carl Edwards. Well, what we had was Carl Edwards, who was like, I'm going to get the chance to talk on MRN. This is great. Pointed the mic flag, Carl calls me in. In hindsight, looking at it, it was pretty stupid because the crew was still working on the truck. I go in, Carl, what happened? What put you out? Put the microphone into Carl. The next thing I know, I'm picked up by a crew member, told to get the hell out of the way, and they are lifted, they pick me up, and they're pushing the truck back to the garage area, and I did my first in-race interview with MRN, being carried by a crew member through the garage. Well, Carl's getting his first MRN interview, so he ain't letting up. He's thanking his dad, his mom, his Mima, his papa. He's thanking everybody, and we're rolling across the interview, and there's crew guys, and I'm hanging out of the roll cage, and I'm getting carried, and my feet are dangling, and I got the microphone in there, and I'm getting this story and everything, and I drop, and when I go off the air, the crew chief cussed me out from head to toe, and I said, but Carl, it doesn't matter. It was my first race, and it was Carl Edwards and I, our first meeting along the way, and it was just really, really cool to have that. Bobby Hamilton, the irony of the world, talk about the interesting irony, to win. Back talking about Ricky Rudd, to win that first race at Pocono. Bobby Hamilton won that truck race. Square D Company was his sponsor, which was part of my past. And I don't know, I just love the irony like that. And then we rolled along. 2004 set in, and I got a 33% pay raise, baby. I'm up to $16,000. Woohoo! Man. Again, went and begged, borrowed, and steal from everybody. But as things would happen with MRN, there was a couple of things going on that really worked to my favor. One of my dear friends, a guy by the name of Winston Kelly. Winston is the executive director of the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and Winston is still with the network, but at the time he was with Duke Power. And we had a period of time there in 2003, 2004, where we had a lot of hurricanes in the southeast. And when there was a hurricane, Winston had to stay back in Charlotte and man the headquarters, if you will, for Duke Power. And so because I was in Charlotte, which was a hub city for US Airways, I was a very convenient guy to fill in. So I'd be sitting there on a Thursday morning, and someone from MRN would call and say, hey, Winston's got to stay. Can you fly to Dover? Yeah, says, oh, there's a plane ticket waiting for you at the airport. Up to Philly, I would go to Dover. And I think in the course of those 2 years, 2003 and 2004, I picked up 6 race weekends because I was in Charlotte, because I was convenient, because I was ready to go, because I had all of this part-time work, and I was very flexible and was able to do it. We also had, in that time, our veteran reporter, Jim Phillips. He retired at that time. Adam Alexander was another one of our reporters. He made the move to TV, although I worked a few years with Adam. Danielle Fry, Danielle Humphrey at the time, or Danielle Fry, she also moved on. And so there was a lot of turnover, and Adam and Danielle were having babies and kids, so I was called every time that someone was having a baby, someone had a doctor's appointment, I was called to fill in. And I was very, very fortunate in 2003 and 2004 that I picked up a lot of extra work with Motor Racing Network and really was able to kind of carve out a little bit niche. Somewhere around the way 2005, along the way, things really started to pick up. I did an audition. They were going to, with NASCAR Performance, at the time NASCAR had an automotive line. They wanted to do a NASCAR Performance, you know, endorsed brand Moog chassis parts or Cleveite bearings or whatever it was, you know. And so they wanted to do a crew chief show. And Larry McReynolds was going to be the co-host of it. It was just determined who was going to be his co-host of it. And I'd gotten along really well with Larry. His son Brandon had ran the summer shootout. Larry and I knew each other fairly well from the garage area and everything, and just loved Larry, and I thought we could work together well. But their vision of the show was, let's have a bunch of crew chiefs sitting around and talk tech. And we're going to do this on radio. And I thought, okay. And I was able to weasel my way into an audition. I have no technical knowledge at all. No skills at all. And I'm sitting there, and there's this crew chief turned broadcaster auditioning with Larry, and another crew chief turned broadcaster auditioning with Larry, and another MRN guy that, you know, worked on his own car, shade tree mechanic guy, and me that, I mean, I wouldn't know a Phillips head screwdriver from a socket wrench. Okay, that's just how I am. And so I did the audition, and the on-air audition went well. Larry and I worked well together. We mock interviewed somebody or did something, and I sat in the meeting afterward, the interview portion of it, and there's old cartoons. And I don't know if you've seen it, where the light bulb goes on the head in the caption of the cartoon. And I don't know where this came from. This is just divine, whatever it is. I'm sitting there in the meeting, and I said, what you guys envision is crew chiefs sitting around talking. They said, yes, that's what we want, and that's really what we're concerned about, Steve. You've admitted you don't have much knowledge of the technical end of the sport. And I said, are people going to listen to that? I said, because what happens when those two crew chiefs get talking over everyone's head? And I sat in that room, and I swear to God, I'm watching light bulbs on top of people's heads going off. I'm like, you need an idiot. You need a dummy. You need someone that can get these guys to translate it to English so that people will listen and not drive themselves into bridge abutments trying to figure out what Larry Mack and Chad Knaus are talking about, for God's sake. And I sat there in the room, and I thanked them for their time, and I walked out, and I'm like, son of a gun, I don't know where that came from, but I think that was pretty good. I got back to the hotel, and David Hyatt, the president at the time of MRN, he calls me at the hotel. He said, dude, I don't know where that came from. He said, I think you got the gig. He said, and you were the low man on the totem pole when we went into this thing. He said, you were the one we just slid in there because we liked you. And sure enough, I got that gig, NASCAR Performance Live, and we had a 10-year run, which is in radio, a 10-year run is a lifetime. And we had a wonderful experience where Larry, another crew chief, and I would co-host a radio show. And getting to know those crew chiefs and getting to work alongside of them, and they owned it. Guys like Jimmy Elledge and Chad Knaus, and those crew chiefs loved coming in and doing NASCAR Performance Live because it was their show. It was a crew chief show. And yeah, there were times I had to slow them down. There were times I had to say, okay, speak English, guys. There were times I had to do it, and we really had a great run, and that really emboldened me in the garage area. I was so fortunate to have that show, and to this day I have crew chiefs come up, man, we got to get that show going again. We got to get that crew chief show going again. And that relationship with the crew chiefs, talking about pit road, that relationship, so that when I walk in that garage area on Friday morning, I know those guys, that is gold for what I do with MRN. And that radio show may be one of the best breaks that I ever had in my life, in the opportunity to do that show and to sit in the studio for an hour with the crew chief and pick his brain and talk about things and talk about the way things go. As we rolled along, programming on Sirius XM NASCAR radio kind of came into play as well. And I was able to weasel my way into the midday show, co-hosting with Chocolate Myers. And I don't remember, I tried to find the year of this, but there was one year where I was on the air virtually 7 days a week. I know I had one year, the month of May and the month of September, I was on the air every day doing something. And you get to the stage where you're just running yourselves in circles. And you continue on, and I had all of these things happening, and this career is just growing. And along the way, I mean, you're interviewing, you're in Sirius, you're at the SEMA show in Vegas, doing Sirius shows where you have Carol Shelby, Guy Fieri sitting there across from me, the diners, drive-ins, and dives guy. And they're both car guys, and they're talking about it, and Chocolate Myers, and Charlie Daniels swings by and hangs out with us, or James Taylor's doing a new concert tour, and we have a, I'll never forget, we're in Daytona. We're down there for one of the anniversaries of the Daytona 500, and up comes A.J. Foyt and sits down at our table. And Chocolate Myers, A.J. Foyt, and Steve Post. Talk about who doesn't belong and why. Okay? We're sitting there. there talking, hanging out, talking racing. Just absolutely amazing what was going on and what was happening. When I look at interviewing different drivers, the question always comes up, and we'll have a Q&A session after this, but the question always comes up, who are some of your favorites to interview? I'll tell you the one that's always the adventure to interview is Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart, I am telling you, he will mess with you every time. His standard go-to is while you're talking, you've got the microphone, he's tapping the microphone, and you're talking and it's bouncing off your lip, it's bouncing off your chin, and he does that. But Tony has this trick. I'll try to describe this in a family-friendly manner here. Tony is part of the Coca-Cola race, or was when he was driving, part of the Coca-Cola racing family of drivers. And that meant during driver intros, he'd always walk around with a Coca-Cola bottle. Well, he would carry this Coca-Cola bottle at about belt height, okay, and walk up alongside of you, and one little flick of that Coca-Cola bottle at belt height, he could take your breath away, if you know what I mean. So you'd be standing there interviewing somebody, and the next thing you know, boom, you'd get hit by Tony Stewart, and oh, your breath was gone. Poor Clint Boyer and I are talking to each other. We're standing face to face, pre-race. Neither one of us saw it coming. The good news for me is the microphone was over to Boyer. At this point, Tony puts the bottle and did a double flip. And he got both of us at the same time. Boyer is there, and I'm not pulling this microphone back because I'm in as bad a shape as you are. And Boyer's like, oh, yeah! Tony Stewart's down here with his normal greeting, and I'm like, oh my God. So the Tony Stewart was always, he was just that character. And so Boyer got through that interview. I just threw it back to the booth because I couldn't talk. I was breathless, and we rolled along. And I would dare say, though, the characters in NASCAR, one of my all-time favorites was Ward Burton. Ward Burton, South Boston, Virginia. Old Ward Burton with the South Virginia drawl. Ward had ran for Larry McClure for years, and that deal had went away. And then 2 or 3 years or 1 year or something later, they had kind of revived the deal, and they show up at Pocono with a car, and Ward is ready to go. He's their driver. He's their guy. We're out on pit road for qualifying. And I said, hey, let's talk to, on the two-way channel or whatever it is, let's talk to Ward Burton. We haven't talked to him in a while, and, you know, he's always good to talk to, and everyone loves Ward Burton and everything. Ward, welcome back to racing. Welcome back. Good to see you. How did this deal all come together? And hold the microphone over. And Ward starts to talk, and a bee starts flying around his mouth. Well, I want to thank Larry McClure for putting this deal together. And he's blowing at the bee because the bee is landing. And we got Runt Pittman running the engine. Runt Pittman building the engines, and we got Joe's Tex sponsoring. I'm losing my mind, okay? My producer's on the radio, what is going on? I can't answer. I'm just holding the microphone. We do also, MRN does the Sprint Vision, the vision screens, and later on they told me the vision people, all you could see was the MRN microphone just doing this because I'm losing my mind. This interview, you talk about church laughs, this interview never ended. I am telling you, Ward and this bee had the most persistence I've ever seen in my life because Ward wanted to thank everybody from the guy that cleaned the shop floor, and this bee was not leaving him alone, and he had to do that 20 times during the interview. And I'm losing my mind. I can't even stand myself right now. And literally when the interview was done, we used that, wow, that's Ward Burton. I just turned the mic off because I couldn't have talked if my life depended on it. And it was an amazing, amazing run. And an amazing time in my life doing all of the serious stuff and doing the stuff for Motor Racing Network. And again, the years all kind of run together. Got called into an office, got called into a meeting, and it was with the Sirius folks. And they had decided that they were going to go in a different direction with the midday show. And face it, nobody likes to hear this. And I didn't want to hear it. I didn't like to hear it. Although I will say this, doing 7 days a week and doing everything, I knew that probably wasn't really good either. And so I was still going to work on Sirius on the weekends, but I was no longer going to do the midday show. And I kind of disagreed with that, but I'm not one of those people that really, I told them, okay, when's my last day. I'm not going to be a jackass at the end of it. I'm going to thank everyone for their time and say Rick Benjamin will join you next week, and we'll continue right on. And I'm not going to, and they were cool. We were all good with it. We all handled it well. And so you're doing it, and the NASCAR thing is kind of rolling along, and I love what I do for Motor Racing Network. And it's like, okay, all of a sudden I have this big block of time during the middle of the week. And so I started working on some projects beyond NASCAR. And at the time, and it would have been 2010, MRN bought a website called racing1.com. And racing1.com had chat rooms and fan forums back in the day when that was big time, okay? So they had the fan forums. And we're at a meeting, and they said the #1 fan forum on racing1.com is Cup Series, Nextel Cup, Sprint Cup. It wasn't Winston Cup then, but probably Nextel Cup or Sprint Cup Series racing. The #2 fan forum is the World of Outlaw Sprint Cars. Does anyone here know anything about the World of Outlaws? And I'll be honest with you, I knew a little bit about the World of Outlaws. My history with sprint car racing was generally not all that good, quite honestly. I grew up here in this area, as I've established, and I would go to the races around. And we had a group up here, and I know that see the Lane boys over here. We had a group called the Empire Super Sprints, and the early years of the Empire Super Sprints were not all that pretty at times. The Empire Spinning Stops, I think, were some of the nicknames that they had, and the drivers were perfectly fine, but a track would prepare for the sprint cars by bringing in one push truck. And sprint car racing was not necessarily something that I really enjoyed at that point in my life. But I loved dirt track racing. And I'm like, I want to get back to some dirt track racing roots. So what we did that year is we formed what we called the World of Outlaw Report. In 2010, we would just dial up somebody, Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, Donnie Schatz, whoever it was, Jason Myers, Jason Sides. We'd call them up and interview them about the race that they just had. Maybe they won, or an upcoming race. And we put together the World of Outlaw Report. And that was 2010. And it was the year of the 50th annual Knoxville Nationals. And the numbers on the World of Outlaw Report were, to the NASCAR, to the voice of NASCAR, to MRN, the numbers on the World of Outlaw Report were surprisingly good. I don't know now, looking back at it, that any of us were shocked, but I think we were all kind of pleasantly surprised by it. So let's do something special for the 50th anniversary of the Knoxville Nationals. Let's do an MRN 1-hour show highlighting the Knoxville Nationals. We need to get your co-host. Who are you going to have? Kendra Jacobs. I had worked with Kendra on the Texaco Haviland account. Kenny Jacobs, a legendary sprint car driver from Ohio. His daughter, Kendra. She was working at the time for Penske Racing, so she knew sprint car racing. She's a former Miss Knoxville National. I said she'd be the perfect co-host for this 1-hour show. We're just going to do one-off. It's going to be a one-off deal. Kendra and I knew each other. Like I said, we'd work together. We were buds. We were pals. We'd travel around the country some, so we were really, really good friends with each other. Called her up. She would love the idea of doing it. She sat in the studio, and we recorded the show. We were going to just record it and then air it later on. Not going to do it live. So we sit down, and we do the first segment of the show, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. And this thing is just rolling. Our conversation is, we are on the same page. I mean, I've done a lot of radio by this point, and I'm sitting there, and we are clicking. We get to the first break. Craig Moore is our producer of the show. Craig gets on the private channel. Kendra, how much radio have you done? She looks at her watch. She's about 10 minutes. He says, you're serious? You've never done this before? She says, no, I've never done any of this before. Well, we interviewed Danny Lasowski. We interviewed Brian Brown, and we interviewed Bobby Ellen. That show, it was Bobby would have been the 20th anniversary of Bobby winning the Nationals. I think he won the 30th Knoxville Nationals, so it would have been the 20th anniversary. Obviously, Danny Lasowski and Brian Brown was the young gun, Danny's nephew. We interviewed those three. Show went up, and the show blew the doors off. We're like, man, there's something here. There is something here. That was 2010. We sat down during the off season. We're like, you have the World of Outlaws, which are great, but you have the Pennsylvania Posse, which are not the World of Outlaws, although the World of Outlaws come there. And you've got California, and you've got Ohio, and you've got Knoxville, and you've got Jackson. You've got all of this sprint car racing. Said we need to be bigger than the World of Outlaw Report. And we came up with a show by the name of Winged Nation. And Winged Nation was born in 2011. Kendra Jacobs and I talking sprint car racing. And it has been an absolutely amazing journey along the way. We ended up with an invite to go out and do live shows at the Knoxville Nationals. Wow, get to go to the Knoxville Nationals. First year I did the Knoxville Nationals, it was opposite of Watkins Glen for the Cup Series. And I'd already committed that I was going to be with MRN to Watkins Glen. So the idiot that I am, said, we'll do Wednesday and Thursday shows at Knoxville, and then we won't do a Friday and Saturday show. I'll just leave, okay? So I go out to Knoxville for my first time ever, and I arrive in Mecca. I arrive in heaven. Dirt track heaven. Tom Schmay, formerly with the Sprint Car Hall of Fame, he knows what I mean. You walk into the Marion County Fairgrounds for the Knoxville Nationals, and you know that's where you want to be that week in August for the rest of your life. I walked in, we did a live show, crowd there, everyone's screaming and hollering, races go off, preliminary night 1, just a great night. Come in and do a show on Thursday, preliminary night number 2, everything is great, everything is good. And Friday morning, while everyone else is all fired up about going to Knoxville, I go to the Des Moines airport to get on a plane to fly Des Moines to Charlotte to Philly to Buffalo to Erie to wherever to get to Elmira. I love Watkins Glen, but I have never been in a spot where that was the last place on the planet I wanted to go that day. I was in good company that day. I don't know what exactly was going on. A young lady that many of us know, Erin Crocker, who raced sprint cars and raced World of Outlaw sprint cars. Erin Evernham, she was on the board of directors for the Hall of Fame. And something in her world was that she had to leave on Friday morning. And her and I sat in the Des Moines airport and had the biggest pity party that two grown people have ever had in our lives. And we have vowed that that will never, ever happen again. We rolled along. We started doing live shows at Knoxville. In 2015, get called into a real quick meeting at MRN. We got something out here. Someone's fishing around here, so we're going to play around with this a little bit. MAV TV, they want a sprint car show, radio style talk show covering sprint car racing, and so we're thinking about putting cameras in the studio. And would you guys be into that? Well, yeah, we'll be into that. MAV TV, it's great taking a show to TV. And so sure enough, we ended up doing a separate show for MAV TV, just the logistics of it. And I just take a whole lot of pride in saying that MRN, and I love the Motor Racing Network, I love our NASCAR work, I love what we do. MRN, the voice of NASCAR, our first venture into TV was sprint cars. And I just love that. I love what we've created with Wing Nation, and it continues on to be just this amazing show that we've built. Kendra has gone on. She is now out at Knoxville doing all the marketing and promotion out there. Erin Evernham now, Ray Evernham's wife, Erin Crocker, she's my co-host on the show, and I've got another co-host, Ashley Stremme, David Stremme's wife. Her father was Joe Deal, raced at Port Royal. So we have got this show. We do 3 shows a week, and the numbers are unreal. As a matter of fact, this year we hit a milestone. 2017, Wing Nation was the first MRN digital show to clear 1 million unique listeners to our show. It has been unreal. We're now invited to do Knoxville. We did shows at the Jackson Nationals in Jackson, Minnesota. We did shows at the Bob Weichert Memorial in Port Royal. And this Wing Nation stuff just is amazing. And I think it's so amazing about it because when I sat down years ago and had that meeting with Sirius, and they told me they no longer wanted me during the middays, I don't know that I was heartbroken. I know I was disappointed. And I look at that meeting, and I've talked to Daniel Norwood, the guy at Sirius, and I've thanked him because that door closing opened up this unreal world of sprint car racing that we have now. And it is absolutely amazing to get to do my passion of NASCAR racing, my passion of sprint car racing, and be able to do it all and put it all together. Along the way, I ventured into some other things. I did a food blog. I shared with you that we had done, when I was doing the Sirius stuff, I'd met Guy Fieri, the diners, drive-ins, and dives guy, and we remain in touch now and just kind of once in a while our paths will cross, but he's just all over the place like I am. But I said, what if we did a NASCAR version of diners, drive-ins, and dives? Like, where are the good places to do in Richmond? And what are the good places to eat here? And who are the good team cooks and, you know, food sponsors and everything else? So for a few years, did a website called foodaroundthetrack.com, and we actually had an MRN podcast called Fast Food. What really happened with it, I was kind of at a crossroads with it, and when that meeting about the MAV TV thing happened, I said, well, I think it answered the crossroads. I probably need to put my focus on sprint cars, and so we kind of got out of the food business along the way. Last year kind of discovered a couple other hidden passions that I didn't realize were there. Lenny Salmons, who does Area Auto Racing News and does indoor TQ racing. And you saw and see Lou and Chad Parks are here, and I'll use this moment to give the shameless plug that Kip talked about, the bus trip, the charter up to Albany, indoor auto racing, TQ racing. Chad, what you guys do with that is unreal to me. So I had the opportunity and to start announcing those. I did Allentown and Atlantic City last year. I was able to do Trenton, and I'll do Allentown and Atlantic City. Not able to do the Albany race. So I'm sorry, I'm going to miss the bus load, but we're in Daytona at that point. And I just found this world of TQ, and we did 600 micro racing that is just a wonderful, wonderful place of short track racers just out there slugging it out. And I've had so much fun. Along the way, last year as well, we have a modified tour, the NASCAR Wheelin' type modifieds, the Southern Modified Racing Series. Of course, in the South, we have this juggernaut called Bowman Gray Stadium, the Madhouse, and it is an amazing place. But a lot of the drivers want to race, and the Madhouse is the stadium, is a football stadium, so they've got to end like in the second week of August because Winston-Salem State plays their football games there. So the Madhouse is a very short season, very compact, very exciting. It's great, great racing. Those drivers have got, with the folks who are in Caraway, a private tour, Southern Modified Racing Series. And they also promote the North-South Shootout. So found myself getting involved with those folks a little bit. And I discovered the Asphalt Modified again, kind of rediscovered it, and what an amazing car that is. And when I look at I sat at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and there was a modified race there, and I was on that little quarter-mile track, so it's not really a great track for them, but I'm watching this, and I'm like, man, these modified cars, wow, they're drastically different than the wing sprint car, but so much the same. Wide tires, engine hanging out all over the place. You know, sprint car has a wing, they have the wide tires and the loud pipes and the noise. And so started to do a little work in the modified world, and we've got a project coming up at the beginning of next year, a little bit more work with the modified tour, and going to start doing some of that. And so as we've evolved and as NASCAR has evolved, I love doing the pit road stuff, but have found passion in the other forms of racing. And I just had a moment this year that just absolutely, I've had a couple moments this year, but I had one that just kind of blew me away. The summer shootout. I mentioned that in 1998 I was hired to do the summer shootout. So I roll along, and we're on a media tour, and one of the executives at Charlotte Motor Speedway says, "How long have you been doing the summer shootout?" I says, "Actually, you know what? This is my 20th year of doing the summer shootout." Man, that's really cool. We need to do something with that. We need to do something with that. And I'm like, oh, that's good. That's great. Whatever you guys want to do, I'm here, you know. So we roll along through the summer shootout, and I never hear about it. And I'm not begging for it. It is what it is. I mean, it's a great idea, but a lot of great ideas fall by the wayside. We get to week number 9, the next to last week, and they said, hey, we want to do something special next week for the season finale. We want you down with Lenny Baticki as the announcer. He does the trackside stuff. I do the play-by-play. So we want you down to do the pre-race for that. And I said, okay, whatever you guys need. I'll be down there, you know. So I go walking down, and I'm just standing there, minding my own business, talking to the flagger, talking to the officials, and I see a young man behind the stage, a young man by the name of Thomas Van Wingerden. The Van Wingerden family is an amazing family, but Tom Van Wingerden was the patriarch of that family. And he had a passion for racing that was just amazing. It was Legends Racing at Charlotte. It was what him and his boys did. His boys went and raced on Tuesday nights at Charlotte, and they were all in. They were there to win races. He ran a successful business in town, but they were there to compete hard, and they did racing for all the right reasons. Tom died probably 7 or 8 years ago in a four-wheeler accident. So sadly, the family had kind of fallen by the wayside as far as racing goes. They still run the business. They're still all very successful, and I follow along with some of them on social media. But I saw Thomas Van Wingerden backstage. I said, that's weird. I hadn't seen him at the track all year long. There is an award that is not given out on a regular basis called the Tom Van Wingerden Spirit of the Legend Award. And it is an award that is given not on the basis of what you've done. It is given on the basis of how you've done things and that passion, that spirit. And I'm standing there, and all of a sudden it strikes me that I'm getting ready to go on the stage and get the Tom Van Wingerden Spirit of the Legend Award. And I am telling you, I've been blessed with so many honors in this sport, with so many things that have happened along the way. But getting that award in August of this year for who I am, the Tom Van Wingerden Spirit Award, was the highlight. It's the best award because it was how I present myself. I love racing. I don't know if I can tell. I know I'm a little shy. I know I'm a little reserved. I know I don't really come out of my bubble, but I love racing. Legends cars on Tuesday night at the Daytona 500 and everything between. I love it. And to get that award was just absolutely amazing. And it's just really, really touched my heart. But I upped that this week. I did something this week that is even, in my opinion, better than that. I was at Eldora Speedway in July doing the Truck Series race. And I shared with you back an hour and 15 minutes ago, my favorite driver was Pete Cordes. I've never met Pete Cordes as an adult. I was a fan of his as a kid, but I'd never met Pete Cordes as an adult. I'm at Eldora, I'm doing some hospitality. I'm there hanging out, and some guy comes up and says, hey, I remember you from 5 Mile Point. You used to watch Chuck Akulis and Carl Nagel and those guys race. And I said, yeah, man, those are the days. He said, man, I used to live right nearby to Pete Cordes. And I said, oh my God, that was my guy. Pete Cordes, that's my guy. And he said, man, he's doing great, doing really, really well. And, you know, we're our older race car drivers, we don't know, you know, I hadn't read that Pete had passed or anything, but you just never know. And I'm like, wow, that's great to hear. He's doing well. He's doing great. And I got thinking to myself, I said, how many people get to meet their heroes? How many times when we're a kid, whether it's a baseball hero or football hero or a racing hero, do we get a chance to meet our hero? And as Kip and I were putting this together, I said, you know what, why don't I come up a little bit early? And why don't I go see if I can meet my hero? I'm at Knoxville. I'm out there getting ready for the Nationals. Pete and I had started to email back and forth and started to talk a little bit back and forth about it. In 1975, Pete was involved in a crash at 5 Mile Point Speedway. And I was an 11-year-old kid, a Pete Cordes fan, and he broke his back in that crash at 5 Mile Point Speedway. And being the fan that I was able to reach out and send a letter to Pete and send him a note. And I'm there in Knoxville Raceway. We had just kind of emailed back and forth and broached that conversation about, hey, I'm coming up there in December. I'd love to take you and Judy to dinner. I'd love to meet you. You're my childhood hero. I would love to meet Pete Cordes. I'm pulling into Knoxville. I get an email from Pete Cordes, and in that email is a picture. And in that picture, we'll put it up here, is all right. It's all right. It's all good. This card. Dear Pete, I am one of your fans, and I saw you Saturday night, and hope you get well. I will miss the blue number 68 at 5 Mile Point. Your fan, Steve Post. How cool is that for your hero to save it? Isn't that amazing? He sent me that. Steve Post, RD2 Halstead, Pete Cordes, modified stock car driver, Sydney, New York. I found the zip code, 10-cent stamp. I'm pulling into Knoxville Raceway. I get an email from Pete Cordes, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and I open this up, and I started to cry. My passion, my hero, had saved this letter from an 11-year-old kid that his bigger-than-life hero had suffered a back break at a race. I was able to reach out to, I'm blown away by this, I was able to reach out, and to make this even better, on Thursday night, Thursday afternoon, I landed in Syracuse, jumped in the rental car, made the haul over to Sydney, and on Thursday night at 4:30, I did dinner with my hero, Pete Cordes, and his wife, Judy. To meet your hero, the guy that saved your letter as an 11-year-old kid. I'm happy to report, a lot of times when you meet your heroes, they may disappoint. As we live in this age of social media, we learn way more about our heroes than we need to know about them. We all have warts. We all have bad times. We all have the little hiccups along the way. My hero, Pete Cordes, when I was an 11-year-old kid, was bigger than life. My hero, Pete Cordes, as a 53-year-old man, is bigger than life times 10. An amazing man. An amazing man. This guy built his race cars from bumper to bumper, built his engines from bottom to ground up, raised 3 kids, had a successful career at Bendix, raced that modified 3 or 4 nights a week, depending on what the tracks were, and did it all while raising that family and while doing everything. Pete Cordes, 30 years ago, found out he had cancer in his arm, had some failed procedures done, and has lost his right arm to cancer. His wife shared with me something that just blew me away. And part of the reason he lost his arm was maybe some faulty diagnosis from some doctors or some faulty treatments. The day after he lost his arm, he went home, and he got up the next morning, and Judy walks out, and Pete Cordes is sitting at the table learning how to write left-handed. Unreal. He still changes brakes on his own cars. He says it's amazing what you can do with vice grips and some leverage with only one arm, and it's your weak arm. He claims, he claims he's smarter. Because he says the whole left brain, right brain thing. And he was right-handed, so his left brain was very engaged, but now that his left hand is the primary hand, his right hand. And he says, I have so many ideas I wish I could have done as a race car. I'm like, why didn't you think of that? Why didn't you think of that? What I learned was that he was so smart with chassis setups and so smart. And he talked about, and then it was bigger tires on the right front and bigger tires and bars here and everything like that. And on Thursday evening, I had a 2.5-hour visit with my hero. As I mentioned, bigger than life as a kid and bigger than life times 10. I met my hero, Pete Cordes. And that is just an amazing, amazing night that I will never forget. And the good news is we're going to meet again next time I'm up. And he may even come to a NASCAR race along the way. I just cherish that relationship. So that's really my story. Steve Post, race fan, little kid that grew up at 5 Mile Point Speedway, loved racing. Little kid that used to sit around in Matchbox cars and mimic the announcers. One of the things I didn't cover here is I'm a single dad with 2 kids and just love my daughters to death, teenage girls. Love my desk. I'm a radio broadcaster, but ultimately just a kid from Halstead, Pennsylvania that decided to pursue my dream after some bumps and hurdles and misturns along the way. And by God, I caught that dream. And I'm really, really proud of where I've been at and where I've come to. And I just appreciate the opportunity today to share my story with you. And I thank you for coming out and listening here today. Appreciate it. And I guess with that, Josh has a microphone. So if there's any questions, and everything's open season, if there's any questions you have, I would be glad to answer them, and we can have a little informal conversation after a formal talk here. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand, and Josh will get around, and we'll start down here with Mr. Buck, if you will. Yeah.
Cordes came to the Morris Hall of Fame in September. I haven't seen him in I don't know how long. Saw him start talking to him.
Yeah.
He says, I said, you remember me? Yeah. I was a handicapper at 5 Mile. Yeah, you used to start me in the back all the time.
Yeah, that was
I didn't want to react and go, I'm sorry, because you used to win all the time. That's why I had to start in the back.
Yeah, that's it. Pete it's the first time he's on the town council of Sydney. He runs Right, exactly. Yeah, he won again. Yeah, he claims the notoriety of being a race car driver, helped him in the election, so he won again. I don't know that Judy, his wife, is all that happy that he's a city council member. That deal. But he also they have in Sydney, they have an elementary school that they've converted to a civic center, and through default, him being a good guy, him being a handyman, him being everything, he kind of runs the civic center down there, and he's doing really, really well. It's amazing. Really is.
A guy that lives up by him, I always tried to get him to come to the old timers at 5 Mile.
Yeah.
Get him to come. Just tell him I said so. Come.
Yeah.
He says, oh, he's the mayor of Sydney. He'll never come down.
He's got this life. It's what everything you would hope, that your father, your parent, your hero, you would hope that they have what they have in life. I mean, what they appear to have. I mean, I don't know, but it's amazing. We're sitting there in the restaurant, and everyone, hey, Pete, hey, everyone knew him. Everyone, I mean, just beloved. And to have that be your hero, like I said, we live in an era where heroes disappoint people all the time. And I was like, man, my hero's better than he was when I was a little kid. And so it was really cool. Great stuff.
Talking about Larry Catlin.
Yeah.
Came to the old timer.
Came to the one in Kirkwood, yeah.
I says, when's the last time you've been here, 5 Mile Point? Oh, man, 40 years ago. He was track champ in 1974.
Wow, and he left.
40 years. He just had a knee replacement. So
Did he really? Larry Catlin. Larry Catlin. I remember Larry Catlin. I talked about Gordy Isham. Okay. Now, Gordy Isham was one tough son of a... Larry Catlin was a pretty tough dude as well. So we're sitting there in turn number 3 at 5 Mile Point, and Gordy had flipped. And he ended up on his roof right in front of us. And Catlin came down the backstretch and hit him. Well, Gordy was on his roof. Well, Gordy was none too happy about that. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. They come down the backstretch. Catlin came back around, and Gordy comes out, and he's waiting for him. And Callan's like, well, Callan's a big guy. He's a tough guy, too. And I'm telling you what, and I was shocked at this, Gordy Isham with one punch laid Catlin right out. Catlin wore cowboy boots when he drove, or big boots. And I'll never forget, he's laying there with the boots pointed right straight up. And just got, Gordy Isham laid him out. But Larry Catlin, I mean, again, bigger than life, just amazing, those guys. And I saw the pictures of that. I was at PennCan the night before, and I wasn't able to make it. But my gosh, the legends in our sport, when you find out at PennCan that night, had a great visit with Chuck Akulis. Just a great visit, like two guys. What's going on with NASCAR? What's wrong with NASCAR? What do you do? You know, you're restoring tractors, you're working on things. And, you know, our heroes of the sport, I think that's why it's so important that we have places like this research library, is our heroes in this sport are just amazing people. And we get a chance to meet and to tell their stories. So it's amazing. It really is. Yeah. Yeah, I saw a picture of that. Yeah, I saw a picture of it. That's phenomenal. It's just amazing. Roger Beagle, another one. Chuck, I mean, just amazing. The legends of our sport, and so many just really good people that wheeled those race cars around. And you know, and I think that's the thing that's so amazing is they didn't do it. I don't think when you're doing this business, you realize the impact. You know, I mean, Dusty Doyle's long gone, but when I look at the impact, a guy like Pete Cordes, my email is SPost68. A lot of people think I was born in 68. I was born in 64. My email is 68 because of Pete Cordes. I always try to have something 68 in a lot of things I do to remember what it was like to be a kid on the backstretch at 5 Mile Point Speedway. And so 68 is a tip to Pete Cordes. I just, and I don't think, and I think that was the fun thing about meeting Pete the other day. He's just assuming he's just racing. And I don't think any of us realize what the impact might be on what we do.
You know how we got that number?
No, I don't know that. Yeah, because yeah.
So he drove my car. He went right home and built a car.
Yeah.
Got the car all built, and he called back and he says, I got the car all done. What number do you think I should have? Oh, I don't know. Just have the next number I had, 67.
Yep.
That's how I got 68.
He got 68 because Ray had 6. Yep, Ray had 6. Yeah, because Pete's 6'8", tall, lanky guy. The lanky. Yeah, he's 6. Yeah, but yeah, 68 was the next number. He had to mention that along the way. Yeah, you got. Yeah, and Judy's about 5'1". His wife Judy's about 5'1". Sweet people. I'm telling you, Thursday nights. I'm telling you, when there is dates that asterisk in my life. Thursday night's one of those dates, one of those times that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. Again, meeting your hero and just absolutely amazing. So,
you look healthier than you ever have. Are you doing something different, food-wise, exercise-wise?
Well, if you mean by healthy, lots of food. I don't want to, philosophically, and I don't need to get all philosophical and everything like that. I just love where I'm at in my world with my daughters, first off, but with my career, with the balance of all the careers and the family and everything like that. And I just think I've surrounded myself with really good, positive people. There's negative people that are around that I've been able to stay away from and kind of work those people out of my life. So again, not to get all philosophical or anything. I've just been very blessed, and the last 10 years of my life have been such an amazing journey, such an amazing reality that you can pursue your dream. That faulty theory theory that I had out of high school and college, that you can pursue your dream and you can catch it, and then savor it, you know, and then enjoy every moment of it, and really do. So I don't know if that probably explains it a little bit. And I feel fantastic, and just, you know, it's not. I'm still eating a pretty good quantity of food. That's for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. You asked my question. What is happening with NASCAR? We see the numbers going down,
yep.
Viewership going down. What's your sense of it all?
My take on NASCAR, you're right. We're in a little bit of time. We're doing a little bit of shrinking right now. I think NASCAR. I think there's a couple things happening. I think first and foremost, we're no longer a car culture. Okay, I equate this to, I have a 16 and 19-year-old daughter. My 16-year-old just got her license on Thursday, 6 months after she turned 16. And I'm telling you what, when I was 15 and whatever to go get my permit, I was wearing the old man out to get the permit. And I think, you know, just looking around this room, we're in a generation that was a car culture. I don't think we live in that car culture. We're probably a phone culture now. You know, I mean, you when I was 16 years old, you want to punish me? Take the car. I'm telling you what, you're hitting me right where it counts. I don't think we have a car culture anymore. So I think that's one factor. I think the other thing, and I know a lot of us old school NASCAR fans have problems with this one, but I think it's just reality. Okay, I'm 53 years old. My idea of a great day is to put on my MRN headset and go sit in the grandstands and not have my phone and not be bothered by anything. That's my idea of a great day. That's probably a great day for a lot of us, to get away from it all. We live in a society that is not inclined to spend 4 hours away from it all. We live in a society that is on our phone all the time. We live in a society that doesn't want 4 hours of entertainment. They want 2 hours of entertainment, and it better be good entertainment, and it better be exciting every lap. I equate it to this, okay? And so I think that's some of the changes that we have. I don't know the stages, and I don't know. I think it added some excitement to it, but I still think the length of the races, and again, much of us old timers, we like our 500-mile races. The reality of it is we need to give that up if this sport is going to grow, because the younger generation, they don't want to sit there for 4 hours in the grandstands at Martinsville. They want to move around. I think that's one of the reasons we see Watkins Glen doing well, is because you can be more mobile at Watkins Glen. Where at an oval track, you're locked into a grandstand and you sit there for 3.5 or 4 hours. Where Watkins Glen, you can be mobile, and they've done a great job with all the boards and the signs and everything else. So I think that those are a lot of the challenges that we have, is that trying to adapt NASCAR while lending itself to our roots, trying to adapt to the shorter attention spans that we have now. And I don't know how we're doing with that. I'll be honest with you. I wish I could stand here and say we're really doing it. And I have an old school radio guy down in WTDR in Talladega, old guy named Grady. And Grady is just like, it's on us old NASCAR fans. We need to stop being whiny about, well, we bet it back in the days. Well, we went to North Wilkesboro. Well, he said, we need to back off a little bit. It's a new generation. We don't get our Big Macs in a styrofoam container anymore. Okay? We don't consume anything like we used to do. Why should we expect NASCAR to be like it was running 500 miles at Rockingham? And so he's kind of like, us old fans need to kind of change our way for the survival of the sport. And we don't know what it likes change. We don't like change, but I think that's part of the challenge that we have. The car culture thing is really one of them. The attention span. Face it, I mean, I have teenage kids. Hey, girls, want to go to the race? Okay, we're going to sit in traffic for 2 hours. We're going to sit in metal grandstands for 4 hours. You're going to be hot. We're not going to be able to talk to each other because it's loud. Oh, and guess what? Your phones won't work. We ain't selling any tickets to that generation with that. That's just the reality of it. And I think that's where, now I talk about my sprint car passion, I think that's where we've seen growth in the World of Outlaws. World of Outlaws is growing because they're 2.5-hour shows, and you got a heat race, and then you can visit. And you got another heat race, and you can visit. And then, man, at the end of the night, the NASCAR race, and again, I love my NASCAR. This is not NASCAR race, some of the most exciting moments of the first lap, when they all come rolling and thundering down through there. With the World of Outlaw race, guess what? We ran all these heat races. We ran a dash. We ran a B main. We ran a C main. Guess what's going to happen at the end? We're going to put all of them out there at the same time for 25 laps of unreal competition. I think the sprint car style really fits the younger generation time span. And I don't know how we get there with NASCAR. I don't know the answer to that. And it's very frustrating because I love my NASCAR more than anything else. But I see this society and where we're going, and it just doesn't match up right now with the way NASCAR is. Yeah, I don't know. Question over here. Yeah.
Thank you for the gracious introduction in Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm. Here we go, yeah.
Do you have plans in the future to write a book?
It's a great question. I'll be honest with you. It's something I've never thought about. And I'll be honest, this whole experience when Kip reached out to me, I'm like, okay, I'll come up and talk. And the last month and a half have been fascinating, kind of piecing this all together. So I don't know. I have no plans at writing a book, but I do have a little bit of an outline now if someone wants to talk about it. I appreciate Kip on that. He may even get a mention in the forward if we do something, you know. But no, I don't. But I appreciate that. I take that as very kind words. And I don't know. You know, and that's the thing. Josh is around here, and Josh and Kip, they're like, what do you have photo-wise? What do you have photo-wise? I've done a terrible job documenting this. I didn't get a picture Thursday night of dinner with Pete and Judy Cortez because I don't live in, I don't know. I've done a good job. When I moved to North Carolina, I gave Casey Cole all my Gator, all my collection. I gave that all away because I was sick of moving it around. I don't do a good job of documenting things. And AJ's down here, and he says, I could get you some pictures, but they may not be pictures we want to have out there. And that might be nights at Country Bob's or Amy's Checkered Flag. So we probably can document some of that. But it's well documented, exactly. So I don't have a lot of the support stuff with it. I kind of live like it's just my memory, just my life, and I'm fortunate to have them. But I mean, they're probably out there. But I don't know who would take to gather it all and put it all together. But I don't know. I don't have much of it. Yeah, there we go. That's true. Yes, exactly. Maybe maybe it's a good project there. Yeah,
Steve,
Ron? Yeah.
We were talking about the younger fans, the future generation. Yesterday, you visited a couple of schools. Tell us about the reception and the questions that the young people had for you yesterday.
Yeah, you know, it was really cool. I think I clipped this mic off. I filled it. And there we go. Yep, I've lost. Well, it's okay. I can. Yeah, it's not like I can't project. Yep. Yeah, yes. Whoops. Now I broke it. I'm 2 for 2. How about I'll just do that? I'll just project. I'll just talk in my normal voice, I'll just use my outdoor voice. Yeah, we had a chance to meet some students at right here in Watkins Glen, and then at Horseheads. The students here were in a public speaking class and some financial class, and then the students in Horseheads were in sports marketing and in different classes. And it's interesting when you meet kids because 80% of them were kind of like, oh, okay, who's this old dude going to tell us about this, you know? Fortunately, we were able to engage, and the message that I have is follow your dreams. The message I have is your dream is probably a little bit more legitimate than a guy playing with Matchbox cars on the floor, okay? But yet the guy playing with the Matchbox cars announcing like announcers on the floor made his dream come true, so whatever it is. And fortunately, we were able to engage. A couple of them said, you know, I want to work in the video game business. And we talked about, you know, the production of video games, the marketing of video games, V-Sports that they do, the video games. I had a kid, this was really cool. I hope this works out. That'd be really funny. Kid likes to make people laugh. And he's doing YouTube videos, comedy videos. And I'm like, son, you're onto this, you know. And hey, if you're good with YouTube and what we have in 2017, the sky's the limit. I think the thing was really encouraging about it is we had a girl down in Horseheads who was into sports medicine. And so she asked a question, and we talked about, you know, different opportunities in sports medicine. And she was actually the one that escorted us back out of the building there, Kip and I. And we made it down to the office, and I said, you know, where'd your interest in sports medicine come from? And she was sharing her, she was a softball pitcher, and she was blowing up a sailor around the way. And how she learned about it from medicine, and what she's learned from doctors, and what she's learned, and how not to have that happen, and how she wants to pitch, and that's what she really wants to do. And I'm like, girl, you're onto it. It's your passion. You know, take that bad situation of injuring yourself, and get yourself healthy, get back there pitching. but figure out what we can do so that other young girls are not throwing their arms out the way you did. And so I was really encouraged. I think the kids in general, 50% of the class was all glazed over. I think the 40% of the class was somewhat engaged because it wasn't their normal teacher. But I think there was a small percentage of them, and including that one girl down at Horseheads that really responded. And I love dealing with kids. I have 2 teenage daughters myself. I love dealing with kids, and I love sharing the message about follow that dream. We all spend a lot of times working in our lives, and some of us have worked jobs that we didn't like along the way. But I love to share the follow the passion story. So it was a great time yesterday. I appreciate Kip setting that up. Really, really good. All right.
I haven't been listening to the Sirius NASCAR for a while, but is Dave Moody kind of taking over for what Barney Hall used to do?
It's a great question. This question was, I'll repeat it here. Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. One of the afternoon's hosts is a co-worker of mine named Dave Moody. And Dave is a very, very strong, opinionated guy. He does the afternoon show, and he is a tremendous broadcaster from Barrie, Vermont. He used to be the announcer for years and years at Thunder Road Speedway, Ken Squire and Tom Curley's place up there. And Dave is very, very strong with his radio show. It's kind of one of the anchor shows they have on Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. His question was about Barney Hall, okay? And I'm gonna say no in that I think Dave has a huge presence in the sport like Barney Hall did, okay? And I think I will fairly say that Dave will acknowledge, and I will acknowledge, that Dave is no Barney Hall. Steve is no Barney Hall. Joe Moore is no Barney Hall. There's only one Barney Hall, and we lost him a year and a half ago. So I don't think from that perspective. I think from the volume, from the face of it, Dave is certainly one of the radio faces. There's such a thing as radio faces of the sport, and he's very talented. He's a great guy, and I think Dave's real strength is he loves to argue. And if you listen to a serious show, I'm telling you that I mean, when I did this serious stuff, I'm like, you got to be freaking kidding me. You want to talk about this? We talk about this. True. Dave is so good because he is really good at arguing and framing arguments and debating and bantering, and he is just really good at doing that, and he likes doing it. Me, it's like, oh, come on, dude, let's not talk about Toyota coming into the sport again. They've been here for 12 years now, or 15 years, and I know you don't like the Jap company coming into the sport, but I'm not, where Dave is really good with that. So they're very, very different. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about Barney Hall. Now, Barney Hall, MRN is called the voice of NASCAR, and to a degree that is true. Okay, but to a degree that is false because the voice of NASCAR is Barney Hall. Barney, a legendary broadcaster from Elkin, North Carolina, and years ago he got hired to go over to Bristol. He was working at a radio station in Elkin, got hired to go over to Bristol, and Barney Hall became the lead voice for years and years and years for Motor Racing Network. The reason Barney Hall is the voice of NASCAR is his folksy charm, his way of telling stories. But Barney Hall in the garage area was the man. He was the man that brokered the deals. He was the man that everyone talked to, and here's why Barney Hall was the man. Barney Hall was the guy that you could go talk to about anything, and you knew 100% that wasn't going to end up on MRN radio until it was meant to be on MRN radio. The most trusted person in our industry was Barney Hall, as far as that goes. And he wheeled a lot of deals in that garage area where he talked to a driver who was getting at the end of a run and talked to a team owner, and he talked to him and put it together. And they knew 100% that anything they told Barney Hall on the QT was on the QT. And he was respected and loved in that. And I think the thing was amazing. The most fortunate era that I worked in MRN, and I don't remember the years, but because of Barney's age, commercial travel commercial flights became a real challenge. And we were able to do a charter system. MRN was still based in Daytona. I was in Concord in the Charlotte area. Barney was in Elkin. And so we would have a private charter plane, and for a couple of years there was 2 seats on that charter plane, and I would fly with Barney Hall. And we would arrive at the airport on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and he'd be sitting there, and I'd be sitting there, and I'd be driving the rental car, and he'd look at me and say, we'd go to Talladega, and he'd say, boy, I think you and I need to go have some catfish tonight. And we'd go to a place called Top of the River, his favorite restaurant on the tour, and we would sit there and talk, and sometimes Richard Childress would come and sit down and talk with us, and we would just visit. The thing that Barney really taught me, though, was we'd get done with dinner on Thursday night, and he'd be like, boy, what time's the garage open tomorrow? The garage opens at 7 o'clock tomorrow. He says, we're leaving at 6:30 then, aren't we? I I said, yeah, we're leaving at 6:30, Barney. We need to be there for the garage open. Barney Hall worked that garage area. I think there's a few of us right now, Alex Hayden, one of my co-workers, I think I worked the garage area fairly good, but nobody worked that garage area like Barney Hall. And what I found amazing about it is that even as close to 3 or 4 years ago, you'd walk in that garage area and you'd be poking around talking to a crew chief, and over in the corner, sitting on a toolbox, you'd see Barney Hall and Jamie McMurray over there talking. Maybe like talking about like 2 or 3 generations difference, and they're talking. Dale Earnhardt Jr., I mean, Barney and Dale's dad, Dale Earnhardt, Barney, and they were fishing buddies, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. He has a few idols, and Barney Hall was one of those idols. In fact, when we knew we were losing Barney was in the hospital. I think he died on a Monday. Junior actually called him at the hospital on Saturday and basically said goodbye and talked to him. So much respect. So to your question, I think Dave is going to have a huge presence in the sport. But I don't know that Davis combined are going to have the presence that Barney Hall had. Just so much. It's just, I'm very fortunate in the broadcasting. I learned from Ken Squire. I spent a lot of time with Ken Squire. I spent even more time with Barney Hall. And I spent a fair amount of time with Eli Gold, who's a great broadcaster as well. And all 3 of them, Barney's no longer with us, but all 3 of them were friends, guys I could call at any moment, at any time with any question. And I know they've given straight answers, so I hope that answers your question there. So it's amazing, it really is. Yeah.
You ever taken a stab at driving yourself?
Have I ever taken a stab at driving myself? Street stocked 5 Mile Point Speedway. Oh dear. Yes, I did. I did 1 media race. I'm driving a car for a guy by the name of Rockin' Roger Salai. It would have been 1990. The reason I know it was 1990 is because I had my foot in the cast because I wrecked a car in 1990. It's another whole story. The K car, rain out gone bad. But it would have been 1990. It was a media race at 5 Mile Point Speedway. And Rockin' Roger let me get in his car, and it was a beat up old street stock. Old Rockin' Roger didn't have the finest looking machinery, that's for sure. But what he didn't have in fine machinery, he made up for after the race in cold beer. So we were all good. Roger, one of my favorite people in the world, and the one race that I drove, I'm thankful. I'm one and done as far as racing, and I'm glad my team owner was Roger Salai. So we start this street stock match race, media race, and I swear to God, we're going 900 miles per hour. I get to the flag stand, and I twitch that car, and it kicks sideways, and I'm Stan Plosky. Back in 1972, just bailing that car down into turn number 1. Remember when the Reading guys used to show up and had fuel injection, and they'd get the car to the flag stand, and they'd crank it sideways. Jim Kepley, Gerald Chamberlain, Stan Plosky, fire flying out of that. I'm in Rogers Street Stock, and I swear to God, I'm doing the same thing. I'm out there just rolling. And I'm working my way forward, and I started 6th or 8th, and I'm working my way forward, and get up to 2nd spot. In the lead is a photographer from this area, Dan Burry. Okay, and Dan was driving Mike Frederick Street Stock, okay? While Roger Salai had a beat the hell Street Stock, Mike Frederick Street Stock would win every car show and would look as good in August as it did during the season. And so I'm moving in on Dan Burry and Mike Frederick's car, and I'm just like, and it became obvious that Dan was driving with the mirror in hand. And I'm thinking to myself, the only way I'm going to win this race is to lay the iron to Mike Frederick's race car. And I don't even want to think about Ken Frederick, Mike's dad, after someone wrecked his race car. So I tried. I had my foot in the cast, and I'm there in the cast, and I get about 6 laps into the match race. And all of a sudden, I was like, man, something in this car stinks. I'm like, oh, it's Roger's car. I mean, there's got to be a wire on a manifold or something. You know what I mean? It's Roger Salai's car. And everything. All of a sudden, about 6 laps in, it was like someone shot me in the heel. Like, what the? My foot was on fire. My cast was on fire because the floorboards were hot. So I had to drive. That's my excuse. I had to drive with my foot up in the air, but I didn't want to mess with Dan Burry's car. And I got out of the car, and Roger's high-fiving me, and we're just having a blast. And I'm like, man, I can't wait to go to Tico's Tavern. We're going to watch the video of this thing. This is going to be epic. This is going to be the greatest thing in the world. Mel Thomas Videos brought the video down, and we queue that thing up, and we're watching the cars parade around the racetrack. And we're watching the cars parade around the racetrack, and I'm like, I don't remember that many parade laps. There wasn't that many parade laps. That's 3 laps into the race. You guys, you weren't Stan Klosky at all. You weren't sideways. There was no fire flying out. The only fire flying off was your heel. You guys were pathetic. You were really bad, and you finished second in a really, really bad race. So there's my racing story. And Ken Frederick wasn't mad at me, so I guess I did all right. So that was my one time of racing. I respect the drivers, but I just always talked about it. I never really had that strong desire to do it at all. Never was one. Some kids, that's all they dream about. So, but I never really had that. So, one and done, one team owner, happy team owner at the end. We drank beer at the end, and I had a top 2 finish. So there we go. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I was handicapped while doing it. So.
Roger still shows up for the old timers.
Yeah, that's right. Roger still shows up. Figure 8 champ at 5 mile point, as a matter of fact. Figure 8 champ at 5 mile point. Yep, absolutely. We have other questions?
Whatever happened to the Jimmy Spencer show?
That's a great question. You know, Jimmy Spencer, I have no idea, and I get that 2 or 3 times. Does anyone ever know what happened to Jimmy Spencer? My understanding is maybe he moved back to Berwick, but I have no idea. He used to do the stuff on Fox Sports Network and everything like that, and I have no idea what happened to Jimmy Spencer. And I get that question a lot, especially doing some of the modified stuff. People are like, whatever happened to Jimmy? And he just is... Jimmy lived a very interesting life because, and I didn't realize this, the first time he told me this, I thought he was nuts. So I said, you know, we were up in New Hampshire doing a show, and we're in a commercial break, on a serious show, we're in a commercial break. I said, what are you doing in that racing? He said, I love to garden and grow roses. Yeah, right, you're Jimmy. You love to grow. And I realized he likes to garden, and he's really into quiet, peaceful things, which just does not seem like the Jimmy Spencer that I know. Yeah, Jimmy Spencer, I mean, I was in that era, 1979. Okay, 1979, we go to Shangri-La Speedway. It's the Dale Campfield was the promoter, and boy, I'm telling you what, that guy could come up with some long line of horse crap. I'm telling you, and this was the last race of the 70s. You got to be at the last race of the 70s. You got to be here. And in comes this kid with a green number 24 car from Berwick, Pennsylvania, and he hit everything. Every wall, the old Days of Thunder thing, he hit everything but the pace car. We're sitting there during intermission, and my old man is sitting there, and we're all talking during the intermission, and the old man makes the dumbest statement on the planet. If that Spencer kid ever figures out how not to hit anything, he'll make it to Winston Cup. Oh my God, you lost your mind, man. Have you lost your mind? Jimmy Spencer will be lucky if he makes it out here without getting his ass kicked. You know what I mean? It's just, and so he you know, and then you follow in the Spencers. The darndest thing in the world was when there was a fight with the Spencers around. Okay, you could sit there, and Jimmy's out there racing, and when a fight broke out, it multiplied to 40 people in an instant. 75% of them named Ed or Edgar. Okay, but the Spencers would come out of the woodworks. I'm down at Evergreen Speedway one time, and someone got into it with Jimmy or Ed or someone got into it, and there's people like you swear they're coming out of the woods. And when you get one Spencer, you get them all. But Jimmy had an amazing career, just saw some amazing, I watched a modified, they had the Clash for the modifieds at Shangri-La one year. And they had like a tour race on Saturday night, the Clash was on Friday night. And I'm telling you, Jimmy, we did the drawing over in Corning somewhere. It might have been a museum, as a matter of fact, did the drawing for the starting lineup, and Jimmy drew last. And so we're like, oh, that's going to be awesome. And so they threw the green flag, and Jimmy comes down the front stretch. He came down the front stretch and got under a few people, got into turn number 1. And I am telling you, he went into turn number 3 in the grass. And he ended up saving the race car, and he came out of turn number 4. I think it was 11 cars in the race. He came out of turn number 4 in 3rd spot after that first lap. Now, 6 of the guys he scared the hell out of in turn number 3 because he's in the grass and there's gravel flying all over the place. He made his way to 3rd spot, and he ended up winning that race in pretty short order. But amazing talent. But I have no idea. I get that one of the great mysteries. Whatever happened to Jimmy Spencer? I have no idea. No idea. Yeah.
In covering races here at Watkins Glen, what's a favorite story of yours?
Lots of neat stories. I've been Watkins Glen is one of those tracks where Kyle Busch has told me where to put my microphone a couple of times, you know, and he gets frustrated with the race here. I think one of the when I look at Watkins Glen, I think maybe Marcus Ambrose win had their pit, and man, that one year when they just went at it the last lap with him and Keselowski and Kyle Busch. And Frankie Kerr was the crew chief on that car at one time, and then I forget who it was, it might have been Drew Blickensderfer. But I think, just covering Marcus at Watkins Glen was so much fun because if you ever had an athlete that walked into a stadium and it's just like, I'm 10 times better than everybody here today. That was Marcus Ambrose at Watkins Glen. I am telling you what, it was, what are you going to do, shoot yourself in the foot not to win this race? Sonoma, it was even up. But Watkins Glen, and then I think Montreal, he was really good at Montreal as well. But that was always fun covering him because he came in, and I like a race. I don't mind a little swagger, a little cockiness in a race car driver. I'll be honest with you, I like pissed off second place finishers, and I don't really care if they tell me to stick my microphone where it doesn't belong if I finish second, because I think pissed off second place finishers are usually pretty good racers, and they're pretty disappointed that they didn't win the race. So Marcus would come into Watkins Glen with a pretty good swagger. One of the most memorable moments, it was a sad day in the sport at Watkins Glen. I was writing for Gator Racing News, and I was in the media center, and I was sitting next to Tom Higgins, who was the Charlotte Observer writer. Tom, a legendary writer. And cars go down the backstretch into the 90-degree turn there, and J.D. McDuffie goes off the racetrack and crashes, and we saw Jimmy Means' reaction, and you knew it wasn't good. I'm sitting there, and we're all kind of watching the TV and everything, and Tom Higgins had a private radio listening to the NASCAR channel, and they paged a doctor, and it was an Asian last name, Dr. Wu or Dr. someone or Dr. whatever it was a name that was that, and Tom just does this, and he reaches down, and he has a Steuben County guide or directory or something, and this is the name of the county coroner. Was paged to the racetrack, and Tom's just like, no. And I'm just a junior, like I'm writing for Gator Racing News. And Tom said, you're not on any deadline. Your deadline is tomorrow at noon. He said, figure out how you would want this story to be told in a classy way and do it. He said, some of us are on a little bit better deadline. He said, but I got until 10 o'clock tonight before the Charlotte Observer needs a story, and it's going to take me till 10 o'clock to figure out how to put my arms around. Of course, this was that. And then kind of the calm kind of settled over the place, and I just went for a walk, and I just did that. So that's probably the most pertinent memory I have. Favorite interview would probably be Marcus. One of my favorite fight stories, okay? About 2 or 3 years ago, it was an Xfinity Series race, and Regan Smith and Ty Dillon got into it. I think it was Ty, might have been Austin, was Ty, one of the Dillon boys got into it. And I knew they got into it on the last lap. And your goal is to be there with the microphone open when the fight breaks out. Okay? Hey, I'm just saying that, I'm just human. That's all you do. So I'm standing there and I'm interviewing the Dillon boy. And I don't remember which one it was. I'm interviewing. I see out of the corner of my eye Regan Smith coming on a beeline. And I know they got into each other along the way. And I'm like, come on, Ty, keep talking, just keep talking. And my radio producer says, heads up, Regan Smith's headed your way. And I'm like, okay, I'm watching. Sure enough, thank God Ty talked long enough. Just when Regan arrived, then we get to do play-by-play, the old Makatech days. Got to do play-by-play, scuffling, and Ty or Austin's dad's involved with it. There's pushing and shoving, and NASCAR officials are around. Watkins Glen, just an amazing place. I actually, one of the things with Watkins Glen that I really was neat is that I didn't know much about road racing at all. And when they announced that Corning and ISC had gotten together and was going to revitalize it, I actually was, and I was trying to think, and I was talking to the kids, someone asked this yesterday with the kids, I don't know how I got word that this was the case, because we didn't have email, we didn't text each other. I might have gotten a letter in the mail inviting me as a reporter for Gator Racing News, but they had the announcement down in Corning. And I just went to that and was able to come up. And I don't know, I had a run of a lot of the first races here. I was able to cover a lot of them. I just love coming up to Watkins Glen, just great stuff. So many great memories here, so many great races. You know, just covering the races here at Watkins Glen has always been good. So lots of great stuff from the Glen, that's for sure. Thank you. Anyway. I think I broke both of them. How about that? A lot of people can break one mic, but you know, Ron, you can invoice Kip for the microphone. So there we go. How about that?
Anyway, I don't know about you, but this was worth 3 years of wait. Yeah, we want to invite everybody back over to the center. Our catering genius, Samantha, has put together a real holiday spread. But Ange would also like, you're all invited back to the center, please go. Ange would like under the southern tier Steve Post crowd to pose for a picture with Steve up here.
Yeah, call your gang up.
My gang, I don't
know. Casey, all my gang here. Yeah, let's do that.
Angela, we need a shot of Steve right in front of the.
We're going to do that too.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
To put this deal together.
I said that. Here's your I don't know why I know why it didn't secure itself, but I don't know why they just started working, so.
It's good.
Oh, well. I turned it off.
Oh, all right.
After Kip was like, I can't get this thing.
Because their system stopped. I was still getting his headset microphone.
Their system stopped.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was still getting you over the headset.
Okay, cool.
It was their system.
It was their system. Okay.
Timed out.
Oh, good. Well, as long as we got it with yours, yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
Mic's off now.
Yeah.
No, you're okay. Who's all come here going up there with them?
Hey! What's going on there, buddy? I didn't see you over there.
Get up there. You're one of the boys. Get up there.
Yeah, everybody.
You going up?
Yeah.
I'll go up and stand next to you.
Well, we got Puzo. Yeah, Puzo, get up here. Put him in the front. Bring your Puzo.
Oh, yeah, come on. Oh, I gotta have That's right. What's going on, Tommy? How are you? Oh, my God.
You're right in the front.
First year.
Tommy.
Get that in the picture.
I will.
If you